After Koichi and Pop Step get caught in the middle of the pro-hero's investigation into the villain factory, a new threat emerges. The Scarred Man, a ruthless villain armed with a deadly quirk, strikes right in Osaka. The police, powerless against him, are easily overwhelmed. Now, with Captain Celebrity's farewell party at the Tokyo Sky Egg just around the corner, will this bomber crash the celebration? And can the Vigilantes rise to stop him? Let's find out. In the next scene, we shift our focus to two large gentlemen who became heated after their shoulders bumped into each other. Koichi arrived and shouted for them to stop the violence. He stuck to a wall near them and introduced himself as the man who facilitates compromise while at their eye level, known as the Crawler. However, the two men seemed to direct their irritation toward him. So in the next scene, he received a palm strike to the face and some wounds. He commented disappointedly that he doesn't understand why ever since he started using his wall cling, he feels like he gets beaten up more compared to before. It turns out he's talking to Pop Step here, and she commented that this is what he gets for always fighting villains, to which he pointed out that he wasn't confronting villains, but normal and grumpy people like earlier, which made Pop Step say them too. Koichi said that it seems like the people in their area don't like him, which made Pop Step think to herself that she can clearly see how he manages to piss them off. She apologized to Koichi and made the excuse that she doesn't have time to think about that now because she was put in charge of leading the meeting. Koichi was surprised and asked where Makoto was, so she told him that she would be late because she needed to visit a family member in the hospital, which made Koichi say sorry to hear that. After that, the meeting that Pop Step mentioned began at the Marukane department store. She explained to her companions that according to Makoto, for each monthly Nerafest going forward, the Captain Celebrity store of Marukane would set up a stall for them on the roof. That would be the official shop of Nerafest, where they could distribute flyers and merchandise. The Feathers were pleased and asked if what they would provide there were things they could make, while the little sisters were also happy. Next, Pop Step pointed out that this was the reason why their agenda today was to brainstorm what kind of merchandise they wanted to see. Mio thought that when it comes to merchandise, what comes to mind are stationery and stickers and stuff, while you suggested small accessories they could wear like charms and pins. The little sisters suggested that they should be affordable, something you could easily buy with your allowance. The leader of the band enthusiastically said they could also sell their band CD, or perhaps Haru's Inca tracks, added the president of the dance squad. Mio suddenly suggested they could also have photos of themselves for fans, so you pointed out that she thinks they need to be famous first before doing that, while the president of the dance squad shyly shouted that this wasn't possible and she wouldn't allow herself to have photos circulating. Full of riz, the leader of the band told her to just print one photo and he knew she would treasure it, which made her feel giddy. After that, the three siblings also suggested if homemade cookies would work there. Mio said that actually, Makoto made a point by saying, nothing that can't be preserved long term. You agreed with this and said it's because that shop is only up and running once per month, to which Miyu added that this rules out most types of food. Furthermore, their potential customers are people who visit the roof of the store on their day off, so their stall should have a feel that you can only experience at a festival. The leader of the band thought about this and pointed out that because of that, he remembered festival snacks, so he also asked if they were sure they couldn't sell food. You replied that they don't have anything that they would actually need to cook and serve. Mio said that after all, it's not like they formed this small group to become salespeople, to which you agreed. Suddenly, Samazu interjected and said that what they expected from them was more of an experience, which made Mio ask who he was. Because of this, Samazu apologized and introduced himself as a member of Manjijuku Private Academy, and Jubei did the same. They also said that the man behind them was their unemployed buddy, Teruo. They said they represent the fan club and they were here to advise. Samazu then asked them to let him explain what he meant. As fans, they said they're not after goods or services with a price tag. He explained that it's about coming together and having fun. The whole shebang. Jubei agreed with this and said that's the point of live events. We are shown that Koichi had fallen asleep while they were explaining, which left the three sisters speechless. They also said that they've been cheering on Pop Step by themselves ever since she started, and they got in touch with other fans and volunteers to start making their cheer section goods. To which Pop Step said that she always appreciated them all, They added that they're having a lot of fun going that extra mile anyway, but there's a but. If they have a chance to make official merchandise for them, they said it would bring fans and performers closer to each other as a team. You understood that, while Mio asked if that meant they would make the wearable accessories they mentioned earlier. Samazu agreed and pointed out examples like tote bags and towels or headbands and fans. The kind of things people look for after seeing performers and other fans wearing them. The president of the dance squad said that if they wanted to stand out, they should make happy coats, to which the leader of the band objected by saying those coats were a bit overboard as merchandise for ordinary people. While their conversation continued, Koichi woke up looking like a drunk person, which scared the three sisters. You suggested why not sell t-shirts. So Mio said that would work in summer, but it's not summer now. Koichi suddenly shouted for them to choose him and suggested they make All Might hoodies. Local exclusives with Narahata written on the back. Yu was puzzled, and Miyu pointed out that Narahata is not a tourist destination and All Might has no connection to it. Koichi, who was already lost in his own world, said that under the symbol of the number 1 hero, when the will of Narahata and the spirits of each person there come together as one, a legendary warrior would be born. Everyone with him was left speechless when they heard that. The three sisters whispered among themselves, and after a while, they simultaneously said they didn't understand because it was too complicated. You asked if Pop Step had any clue about what Koichi was saying, so Pop Step embarrassedly said that he believes he gets a power boost while wearing an All Might hoodie, and she pointed out that he is utterly convinced of this, which made Miyu ask if Pop Step's friend is just a complete moron, and she agreed. Samazu and Jubei spoke seriously to Koichi and called him Cruller, telling him to listen to what they were going to say. They said the meeting wasn't about what he wanted, and why didn't he just have a patch made and stick it on, since it was just for him anyway. Koichi eagerly explained to them that the divine blessing wouldn't work unless it was official All Might merchandise. Because of this, Mio told Pop Step to handle it, which left Pop Step speechless. Before long, Makoto arrived and immediately asked if they had come up with ideas. Pop Step asked her how her brother was, so Makoto said he was fine and he said he would be discharged soon. She said he should rest and recover, but he's a workaholic and often overexerts himself, which made Pop Step think to herself that Makoto was the same. When Makoto asked who had today's minutes, you gave it to her. She read that what they had discussed were food, which was immediately rejected, branded merchandise, cheer goods, and clothing. Koichi started making a fuss about hoodies too, so Makoto added that. She thought about this for a moment, and before long, she decided to make arrangements, which surprised her companions. Captain Celebrity arrived, which delighted the three sisters, and made Makoto shout that they were done there and they would move on to their next meeting. The leader of the band commented that Makoto always moves at a mile a minute, while the president of the dance squad asked Pop Step if Makoto was really okay with the hoodie idea, and Koichi was jumping with joy. In the next scene, while Koichi and Pop Step were walking, Pop Step was saying in her mind that Makoto approved the All Might hoodies in the heat of the moment, but it wasn't really in the spirit of this whole operation, and it was more like Koichi's personal obsession. When she was just about to convince Koichi to give up on that idea, Koichi suddenly turned to her and said that what Samazu told him earlier was important. He explained that it's important to have that sense of unity among people, just like when he quickly goes to a scene and sticks to a wall. If he had a large Narahata logo plastered on his back, people would immediately think he was a local, or they might have seen that hoodie somewhere. He added that he bet he would be on the receiving end of fewer fists before he even noticed. Pop Step was left speechless and thought that he was really serious about this. Koichi then said that it's up to them to get those hoodies out into the world, to which Pop Step said in her mind that it's hard to imagine them being that popular and it would be a challenge. She also thought that perhaps they could all wear them on stage together. When she imagined this, she began to blush profusely at the image of Koichi and her wearing the same hoodie. While feeling this, Koichi looked at her saying he couldn't wait anymore. In the next scene, after 2 weeks, the samples of their merchandise arrived, which made them comment on how fast it was. Makoto explained to them that first were the food offerings, which puzzled them because wasn't that supposed to be a no-go? Makoto agreed with that, but said they wouldn't distribute those. Instead, they would collaborate with the food court. Each shop would offer exclusive feather hats-inspired cross-promotional menu items. Koichi's excitement was visible and he immediately asked what was next, So Makoto continued that as far as branded merchandise, they had tote bags, scarf-style towels, bag charms, and wristbands. She said they also had pins there. They were small and perfect for collectors. Samazu realized that this meant people could combine those pins in different ways to show off their personal style, which earned Makoto praise from him. Next, while Koichi was asking what else they had, Captain Celebrity arrived carrying the all-important hoodies. Koichi was very excited as he opened them, but when he saw what was inside, he seemed shocked and stunned. It turns out this was because they weren't All Might designed, but exclusive Nerifest hoodies from the Captain Celebrity shop. While Captain Celebrity was modeling it, he said that they would each have one to promote the brand on stage. Koichi's expression was indescribable as he observed this, while Yu and Mio asked if it was like a staff uniform. They added that it was too flashy to wear normally. Koichi began to feel dejected and lose interest, which made Pop Step shout in concern for him. In the next scene, she explained to Makoto that what he wanted was All Might hoodies specifically, while Koichi seemed to have lost hope in the world. Makoto wondered why they would do that when All Might had nothing to do with their operation, to which Pop Step agreed and said she wasn't wrong. Captain Celebrity laughed at this and told Koichi not to be sad. He tried to cheer him up by offering his autograph on his new hoodie, to which Koichi listlessly replied, "No thanks." Because of this, Jubei commented that he was starting to get annoyed with Koichi, which Mio added to by saying that, as she had said, he was a total moron. In the next scene, we shift to a place where a Shisa lion is causing chaos, and because of this, people are wondering whether it is a gigantified villain or an ancient beast incarnate. On the other side of the area, there is supposedly a jumbo Goya that can't control its growth due to extreme weather patterns, and there is also in another area a supersized Okinawa-style tofu that came from a genetics experiment gone wrong. Because of these, people thought it was their end, but fortunately, the #1 hero whom we all know arrived there. In a quick event, he defeated all the monsters that appeared there, which amazed the people. After that, we move to a cafe, and here All Might is apologizing to Tsukuchi for being late. He explained that he had something to take care of in Okinawa, and he said that he knew he wouldn't blow this off. In fact, he said he looks forward to their little meetings, and he really wants to have a true conversation. He also remembered to give his paperwork that was already signed, but when he looked at Tsukuchi, he was surprised and concerned about what happened to him. When Tsukuchi told him what happened to him, All Might stood up from his seat in surprise and concern. He tried to calm him by saying it was nothing. He said they were just hairline fractures on his collarbone and ribs, which made All Might shout if he really called that nothing. While coughing blood, All Might told him that he knew he would come to him anytime, to which he said he would prefer not. He said All Might shouldn't take jobs for personal reasons. If news got out that he was prioritizing certain people, villains might use him as a diversion or a hostage. He explained that the greatest hero of all time should be a public figure who never reveals his private life. All Might thought about this, and before long, he agreed while taking out a paper bag. Tsukuchi asked what was inside it, so he shyly said that he had gifts from on the job and he wanted to share them. He asked if that was allowed, to which Tsukuchi just scratched his head, and before long, he also took out a paper bag that he bought when he was in Osaka for him. When Tsukuchi opened what All Might gave him, he saw soap, so All Might pointed out that they were bath salts that were rose-scented. He said they looked fancy, so his sister might like them, and didn't they live together? Tsukuchi thanked him and said nevertheless, it would be better to hide the fact that they came from All Might himself. All Might agreed to this and said it could indeed cause trouble, so Tsukuchi pointed out that it wasn't in the way he was thinking. He explained that his sister was a person of interest. He said she had been somewhat of a lawbreaker for a while now, so he imagined that she might try to use information about All Might to her advantage, which made All Might ask if that's what he really thought. In the next scene, Tsukuchi had arrived home and immediately gave All Might's gift to Makoto. She asked what it was and if he was buttering her up with a bribe, so he told her to stop that and said it was just a souvenir from his coworker. In that case, she said she gladly accepted it. After that, Tsukuchi wanted to talk about their recent conversation, so Makoto sarcastically replied that here they go again. She said he wouldn't give him personal information about Pop Step, and he should stop treating her like a criminal. Tsukuchi replied that she wasn't getting the point. She was involved in a villain's plot, which means he needed to interview her. Makoto countered by asking if it wasn't a voluntary interview, and she heard that Pop's step was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He said that was also what he thought, but it was still necessary. After that, Makoto said that the girl had gone home safely and just wanted to forget what happened, so for her, the matter was closed. Tsukauchi also disagreed with this and pointed out that she uses her leap quirk to perform on streets by day and becomes a vigilante by night. He said they couldn't overlook a minor who repeatedly engages in risky acts. Makoto then asked if he was changing his tune now. She said he should know that she has devoted herself to legitimate events lately, and she oversees all of them, so he should direct any complaints to her. After that, Tsukauchi said that if that's the case, she would just throw away his feedback, to which Makoto tauntingly said he should interpret it however he likes. Because of this, Tsukauchi just fell silent, so Makoto told him not to be sad about it. She said she wasn't breaking any laws, and if anything happens, she would go straight to him. Tsukauchi irritably agreed to this and said they would set it aside for now, but she shouldn't forget her responsibility for the well-being of someone else's child. He also pointed out that she tends to be so flippant about things, to which she agreed and said that being uptight never solved anything. Tsukauchi shouted that that's exactly what he meant, but Makoto ignored him as she examined the contents of the bag he gave her. When Makoto took out the bath salt, she saw that it was a foreign brand and looked expensive, which wasn't exactly something a police officer would buy while at work. The paper bag, she said, was another matter. She explained that they might have just stuffed it into a bag they had on hand, but this looked brand new, with an All Might logo no less. Because of this, she asked if it could be that Tsukauchi's working with someone from All Might's agency. Tsukauchi tried to take back the souvenir and said if she was going to interrogate him, then never mind. Makoto pointed out that he couldn't do that and asked if he had heard the phrase, "no take-backs." She added that he doesn't use such things. Tsukauchi replied, "Really?" and told her to watch him use it. In the next scene, we go to Recycle Shop Hoppers. Here there is a villain who looks like a praying mantis insect, and he angrily said that he should sue them and their society deserves it. One of the Hata brothers, Kamayan, called to him and asked if he was seriously going to complain to the police, and if he was really that upset about them arresting him like a villain. With them are Detective Tsukauchi and Aizawa commented that it's completely normal to treat someone like him as a villain when they start rampaging, and Tsukauchi added that all charges were dropped after they learned that he was the real victim, since they forced the drugs into his system. He said he should hold a grudge against the organization that kidnapped and bioengineered him. Ichiro was concerned that there are many such people in the world and about the idea of bioengineering. Kamayan explained that it wasn't about that. He said yes, he hates those people, but he was talking about something else, which puzzled the Hata brothers and made them ask what it was. Kamayan told them that he had finally returned to his apartment after being released, but he couldn't even enter it because of the size of his body. He said there was nothing he could access in town. What's worse, he said, is when he needs to relieve himself, and just as he was about to explain what he goes through there, Jiro said they already get it, so he doesn't need to expound on it. Ichiro commented that this big guy is squatting in their warehouse for the time being, and it's definitely not plush living. Because of this, Tsukauchi pointed out that individuals with unusual bodies can apply for public housing services. Kamayan seemed irritated at the idea that he needed to live in a different place depending on his size, so Ichiro told him that that's what real giants do and he's the only one complaining about it, which made Kamayan say they still missed his point. He said all of these inconveniences are because their society is still half-baked. The needs of the minority, he said, are not addressed by the infrastructure, social programs, and so on. Jiro commented for him to look at himself crying about his own problems, but making it seem like a big important cause, while Ichiro said what big talk coming from a dumbass like him. While Kamayan was saying what now and all he could say here is that society should be blamed, Ichiro suddenly smelled something. He asked what that pleasant smell was, and Jiro also noticed that it smelled like roses. They asked Tsukauchi if he had put something there for them, which made Tsukauchi begin to feel embarrassed because they noticed the bath salt from All Might that he had used. Kamayan asked if it was perfume or cologne because they might try it and cause women to chase after him. Because of this, one of the Hata brothers teased him that no woman wants a man who has to defecate in a bathtub because that's not normal. So he retorted that maybe they're looking for weird kinks. "You'll never know," he said. which made the Hata brothers comment that he doesn't give up, while Aizawa was smirking on the side thinking how ridiculous they were. In the next scene, Tsukauchi met with All Might again, and here the TV was reporting about All Might's rescue in Nagoya. As Tsukauchi was sitting down at their table, he thanked All Might again and called him Mr. Yagi. Just as he was about to tell him who received that gift, he suddenly smelled himself and realized he couldn't lie. Mr. Yagi wondered why not, and if he had a fight with his sister. Tsukauchi said that as far as he can remember, his sister has always been like this. She breaks the rules and makes promises when it suits her and tries to explain to get out of trouble. He questioned that her use of these tactics on the police, however, is downright antisocial behavior. After that, he said that when things go south, she comes running to him and expects him to clean up her mess, calling Makoto a bad apple. Mr. Yagi thought about it for a brief moment when he heard this, and then commented that maybe it's because Makoto's not dealing with the police, but rather her big brother. He said she just knows that he's there for her, and Mr. Yagi was sure of that, which made Tsukauchi realize something. He immediately said that's how Makoto takes advantage of him, to which Mr. Yagi replied it seems so. After that, Tsukauchi went to his office, and here Tamagawa noticed his rosy smell, which made him ask what smelled good there, while Tanuma teasingly asked if he had found a lady friend, to which he blushed and embarrassedly replied not to bother him. In the next scene, there was a group of boys from the Mazinger High Karate Club, and they were causing trouble because they were demanding a passionate group date with their female classmates. As always, Koichi arrived and said excuse the interruption. He claimed to be the man from just out of range from getting smacked, who has some friendly advice about maintaining healthy, distanced relationships between boys and girls, known as the crawler. The apparent leader of this group turned to him and called him a fool. He said Koichi really dared to interfere with their school's hardline tradition of getting dates. After saying this, his group simultaneously delivered iron punches, and their quirk is called rocket thrust. Because of this, Koichi became concerned and removed his hands to try to block himself. Unexpectedly, he managed to deflect the rocket thrusts using his quirk. He wondered if he really did that while his 2 feet were still attached to the wall, but before long, he was hit in the face by another iron punch because he lost focus. While this was happening, we went to the police building, and here Tsukauchi, Tamagawa, and Tanuma were watching footage from a surveillance camera on the day of the incident in Osaka. Tsukauchi pointed to a scene where the suspect activated his quirk the instant the police piled on him. Afterward, he escaped after stealing 10 guns and firing dozens of shots, all done in less than a second. Tanuma thought it might be an acceleration quirk, but it didn't seem that way because it wasn't just a burst of movement. He said it was the type where even his brain works as fast as his quirk. He added that they were seeing more than just speedy moves here. Some people, he said, can see, hear, and think at hyperspeed. For them, the rest of the world seems frozen in place. Tamagawa commented that if that's the case, they seem to have heightened focus. There are heroes like that who can handle gunfire barehanded. Tsukauchi agreed with this, but said he hadn't heard about it to this extent. It's possible that the man's quirk was being boosted by Trigger. He said it would be better to cross-check it with the quirk registry, just in case. He suddenly asked if he heard Tanuma's mention of frozen in place correctly. After he asked that, the scene abruptly shifted to recycle shop hoppers where Tsukauchi was asking Aizawa if he knew a clock. Aizawa replied that he knew the name. He said he's called the high-speed hero a clock, a veteran crime fighter from the last generation. His trademark move, he said, makes use of his acceleration quirk to land 4 simultaneous blows. However, there haven't been any reports of his exploits in the area for years. Tsukauchi understood this and said that the details are unclear, but apparently he stopped renewing his hero license a few years back. After that, the Hata brothers scolded them, saying if they weren't there to see them, could they please not come to their shop for their discussions. It was somewhat hurting their business. Aizawa said it's because he lives nearby, and there aren't many cafes in their area, to which Jiro replied that he doesn't see them serving coffee either. Nevertheless, Aizawa ignored this and just asked Tsukauchi why he became interested in a clock. Tsukauchi explained that he encountered a villain in Osaka with a similar quirk, to which Aizawa asked if he was thinking that the old hero might have turned dark and become a villain. He added that would be one hell of a scandal if it happened. Tsukauchi said not quite, and explained that the ages of the two don't line up for them to be the same person, but the common element is a clue he can't ignore. After all, he said it's not unusual for a parent to pass down a quirk to their child, or for those with rather unique quirks to act as mentors for the next generation with similar abilities. Given that, Aizawa asked if he was looking at a familial connection or master and pupil relationship, to which he replied that it's just a hunch of course, but he would bet anything that those two have met. The problem here, he said, is that he doesn't seem to be able to locate where a clock is. Ichiro commented that there are so many heroes who go into hiding after they retire, and Jiro added especially the rough-and-tumble types who roam around looking for opponents. On that note, he said, Aizawa should check his attitude while calling him Eraserhead. Aizawa seriously asked why in the hell he should care what criminal scum think of him, which made Jiro shout that's the attitude he was referring to. Sukauchi explained that that's just how it is when heroes who operate on the down low decide to hang up the cape. After one too many beatings from villains, he said they realize they're hitting their limit, and they disappear without a word. Aizawa then said that he'd like to think the guy's just enjoying retirement in peace somewhere, as that'll be his someday. In the next scene, we went to a condo unit, and here we were shown the speedster villain training on a sandbag. He was performing a sequence of wide swings and going pedal to the metal. He said telegraph punches are fine because the priority is power and his quirk provides the speed. He prepared to deliver simultaneous attacks to the sandbag, and in an instant, he managed to punch it 4 times with each fist. After doing this, he decided that his training for the day was done. While rotating his shoulder, he explained that the power behind his punches is what he needs in his accelerated state. He also pointed out that at this point, his limit is instant 8, so he needs to continue honing these skills. It appears he was talking to someone on his earphone, and he told him that's unnecessary if he's going to use firearms like he did the previous day. He replied no, and that he's just more partial to raw punching power. The individual he's talking to then let him be, and said it also yields more data about his physical state while accelerated, which is quite valuable. He agreed with him and said this guinea pig is doing his best. After that, he ended the call and commented that his boss really doesn't understand. He said he would only resort to grabbing a gun and firing it if he were cornered, which happened last time. While walking, he also said that if he did that, it would be so uncool. While contemplating in front of a poster of a clock, he called him master and asked if he was right that using a gun was totally not heroic. After that, the scene suddenly shifted to Koichi's house. Upon arriving home, he saw Pop Step studying, which made him comment that it was good for her. Pop Step said it was just homework for school, and she shouted in concern when she saw he was beaten up again. Koichi brushed it off and told her to forget about it and to watch him. He said he thought of a new move today. He placed a can of sparkling water on his palm and began to focus. Gradually, his palm began to glow, and before long, he managed to propel the can upward, which surprised Pop Step. She asked if something shot out of his palm, so he explained that it's similar to the repelling force as with his slide and glide, but it's just coming from one hand. Pop Step was puzzled by this and said she thought he needed to activate it using all 4 of his limbs, to which he explained that as a kid, he tried to glide everywhere while standing, but he always fell over, so he probably just started using it to make his positions more stable out of habit. Today though, he said, he managed to get just his feet stuck to a wall and used his hands to deflect punches. Taking it a step further, he said he can lower his butt, lock his feet in place, tuck in his chin, and position his arms forward. In this stable stance, he said all his weight and power is in his palm thrusts. He shouted thrust, and before long, he managed to release air pressure from his palm. He proudly introduced this move to Pop Step as his offensive form. He said he imbued the heels of his palms with the wild spirit of sumo, the crawler, scrappy thrust style. In his excitement, he released his thrust attack again, which caused his window to break. Because of this, Pop Step was forced to dodge, which worried Koichi and made him ask if she was okay. While she was irritated, Koichi commented that that last one had a bit more oomph to it. She then started pushing Koichi toward their pin board and had him look at it. She asked if he remembered the line they drew between what's okay and what's not. He saw the bag he hung there containing Knuckle Duster's bandana and knuckles, and he started to remember how he acted, like breaking windows, being aggressive, and so on. Because of this, he thought that Pop Step's point was that this wasn't okay, and she agreed with him. He scratched his head and commented that it seems he shouldn't model his life after his master. Pop Step agreed with him and said that Knuckle Duster is basically the gold standard for this, is 100% totally wrong. The next day, Koichi looked around carefully, and when he noticed it was clear and no one could see him, he put down the boxes he was carrying and placed 3 cans of sparkling water on top of them. He took 3 big paces and immediately tried to release his thrust attack. However, he lost his balance when he released it, so he fell over, which caused the cans to shake. He stood up quickly and remembered that he needed to lock his feet in place first, or else he would lose balance due to the recoil. He added that if he wanted to release something as powerful as yesterday, he needed to build up power in his hands and release it all at once. Just as he was about to release his ultimate move and what he calls it, Pop Step suddenly arrived and asked him what he was doing, which startled him. He nervously commented on how early she had arrived and what was happening. Pop Step's eyes glared at him, so he looked away to the other side. When they went inside, she told him to listen. She said that, like she told him yesterday, he can't fire his projectiles just anywhere without a license or qualifications or anything. She said it's as bad as throwing rocks at people. Koichi said wait a minute and that his shots aren't hard, and he could dial back the power. Pop Step questioned him, asking if it's okay to hit people as long as the bullet is soft, and pointed out that it's not. If he's caught by heroes or police doing that, they would certainly arrest him. So Koichi immediately stopped using his power and agreed. After that, while putting on his hoodie, Koichi said it was time to go patrolling and asked Pop Step if she would join him. Pop apologized because she still had homework to do, which made Koichi comment that she was really getting busy because of it. Pop Step said her school combined junior and senior high, so instead of studying for entrance exams, they have a lot of homework. Koichi was surprised and commented that it must be nice not to have entrance exams. Pop Step pointed out that accept it means more homework. After saying this, she made Koichi leave because he was distracting her, to which Koichi speechlessly replied okay. In the streets, the surroundings were filled with civilian screams, and we were shown Koichi looking very concerned. It turns out this was because there was a rampaging villain with no face and 6 arms. He commented that it had been quite some time since he had seen such a straightforward villain, and this one was a pure bruiser. Big, jet black, and on a rampage, and it also looked like an octopus. He called for Pop Step and ordered her to spread the word about what was happening here, but then realized she hadn't come with him. Because of this, he started telling civilians to run and call the authorities, because it would be the end of him if no one showed up there to help. He started running while being chased by the villain, but he suddenly turned and said hold on, he needed to think. He noticed that this villain had a lot of arms, but it wasn't that fast on its feet. It wasn't that dangerous as long as he maintained his distance. Suddenly, the villain destroyed a wall using its elbow, and then it took the debris and started forming them to throw. This troubled Koichi, and while dodging, he was shouting about what kind of crazy person would throw rocks at people. While this was happening, we shifted to recycle shop hoppers, and here the Hata brothers had a customer who requested a sample of livestock nutrients for increased wool production. The person they were selling to was puzzled at first, but understood it quickly. Ichiro also informed him that this isn't an approved drug, so they can't exactly recommend that he use it. They're just his helpful importer. Once he steps out of their door, he assumes responsibility. The person they were talking to, who looked like an old bald man, replied that he understood them, but also asked if that stuff really was effective. Because of this, Jiro removed Ichiro's cap and showed his bald spot to the client, and the man was pleased to see it had some wispy hair, while Ichiro was embarrassedly saying that he was also fighting that battle. Their doorbell rang, indicating someone had entered, and it turned out to be Aizawa. The man immediately left, and the Hata brothers nervously thanked him. After that, Aizawa got a stool and upon sitting ordered a black coffee without sugar, which made Jiro irritably point out that they aren't baristas. He added that he thought they had already told him not to come there without a good reason, so Aizawa said he was on duty. He needed to keep his ear to the ground about the black market in this town, especially since the business in Osaka ended the so-called crab route. Because of this, the Hata brothers let him be, and Jiro just said that if they hear anything, they'll call him and he needs to trust them, to which he replied that this is also a ritual for him, which puzzled Ichiro. Aizawa explained that he's not what you'd call a morning person, but going to their store before patrolling puts him in the right mood, to which Ichiro said that sounds like a him problem, which made him say it's just rational. He added that they make delicious coffee, which made Ichiro comment that he's a bastard, and he invited his brother to charge him. Suddenly, a rock flew into their shop, which startled the brothers, while Aizawa remained nonchalant. They were concerned for their shop, and before long, Koichi arrived and asked if they were okay. He informed them that there was a big villain coming and they should run while he distracted it. He stopped talking when he saw Aizawa and quickly turned away. He nervously thought that this was a racer head who had gone toe-to-toe with Knuckle Duster. Just as Aizawa was about to say who he was, Koichi immediately played dumb and asked what and who he was talking about. He said he was just an upright citizen of this fine town. The screams of women quickly caught both their attention, and when they looked, Koichi was alarmed because he saw the villain was about to hurt two high school girls. Because of this, Aizawa was forced to act quickly and said they needed to talk later, but for now, he should go to a safe place. Koichi agreed and said it looked like Aizawa would handle it, which made Ichiro ask if he was really going to leave, so he said yes because he scares him. Aizawa used his scarf to wrap around the villain's wrist and stop it from punching, and using that, he propelled himself closer to it. He tried to use a razor on the villain, but it didn't work. It pulled him closer while he commented in his mind that this was one of those bioengineered villains. Because he noticed it was a pure brawler powered by sheer muscle, his erasure wouldn't slow down its movements. It tried to punch him, but he managed to dodge the 1-2 punch. Adding to his problem were its octopus arms. Nevertheless, he said while wrapping its hands with his scarf, if he couldn't handle this, he wouldn't be much of a hero. The villain tried to rip off his scarf, but he said it should give up because it couldn't tear his binding cloth that easily. The two high school girls thanked him while blushing, but he just brushed it off and told them to run. Unfortunately, both of the villain's hips seemed to bulge, and extra hidden arms suddenly emerged, which shocked Aizawa. Because of this, it managed to hit him solidly in the face and send him flying into a wall. Ichiro was concerned for him, while he realized that this villain wasn't an octopus since it had a total of 10 arms, but a squid. He checked how the two girls were doing, and it appears they were safe. In his mind, he thought that if this was his end, it would be okay. Ichiro shouted in extreme concern that the villain was charging toward him, while he was just commenting in his mind that it would be optimal if he survived this, but his body wasn't moving. Unexpectedly, Koichi suddenly positioned himself between them and was ready to use his thrust, which surprised him. According to Koichi, Eraserhead doesn't go in for TV appearances or gimmicky performances, and he's a hero who specializes in crime fighting. That might be the reason why he doesn't come off as lovable as most heroes, and he's even kinda scary, which is why Koichi did his best to steer clear of him whenever he saw him in town. Then, the scene returned to Aizawa being thrown by the villain, which shocked the Hata brothers. Aizawa was flung against a wall, and the villain was about to punch him, so Koichi said that he had been avoiding Aizawa until that moment. He said he needed to act, and he used his new ability on the villain, hitting its chin. Because of his jump, he rolled around next to Aizawa, who seemed to recognize him, so he pretended not to know what happened. He even asked Aizawa if something shot out from his hand, and it was perfect timing, which he didn't intend, so how mysterious it was. The villain became angrier at that moment, and Aizawa mentioned that the villain wasn't even fazed by what Koichi did. On the other hand, the Hata brothers had already used Trigger, and they simultaneously kicked the villain in the face. They even did somersaults in the air before landing like superheroes, and they said it was double Hata time. Koichi asked Aizawa if what they were doing was totally legitimate self-defense, and the brothers justified that they used a legal version of Trigger. While using the binding cloth as an arm sling, Aizawa said that the details could wait, because more people would be hurt by the villain if it reached the town, and it was up to them to bring it down. The brothers replied that that was asking a lot, especially since their attacks didn't do anything, and Aizawa could only use one arm. Koichi asked if he should run and look for help, but Aizawa said not yet while calling him Crawler, so Koichi corrected him, but Aizawa didn't care. He asked Koichi if he could repeat his attack, what its range was, and if that was his strongest. Koichi replied that if he braced himself, he thinks he could make it stronger, but it was scary to stand still and hold his ground against that villain. Aizawa said that if that was the case, Koichi should just shower the villain with weak attacks and draw its attention. Then, he asked the brothers if there was a place where they could fight, like an empty lot or a building without civilians. One of them answered that he knew a place, but it wasn't good, but one brother objected, so the one who suggested justified that they had no choice. They ran toward that building, while Koichi stalled using his new ability. He said that shooting while running backward wasn't as easy as he thought, so one of the Hata brothers praised him. All of Koichi's attacks hit their mark, and he mentioned that his wimpy pot shots were just making the villain angry, while one of the Hata brothers said that was perfect for luring it. In another place, Kaomon was pouring tea and listening to music from an MP3 player. He was super chill in that place, and at that moment, one of the Hata brothers arrived. Kaomon asked what was going on, and he said it was common courtesy to knock because the brother was invading his privacy. The Hata brother apologized because they needed that space in a hurry, so maybe Kaomon would like to leave for a while. Kaomon complained and even asked if the Hata brother knew what squatters' rights were, but the brother replied that there was no time for that. At that moment, Koichi also arrived, who asked if he was just going to lure the villain there, and Kaomon greeted him, which frightened him. Kaomon asked Koichi why his attitude was like that, because he almost looked at him like he was some kind of villain, but Koichi replied there was almost to it. Kaomon replied that it was discrimination, judging people based on their looks, and people weren't aware of their prejudices, so Koichi apologized, while someone was telling him not to engage. Then, Ichirio and Aizawa arrived, while Kaomon said it wasn't his business, and it was his afternoon tea time, so if they were going to make trouble, they should do it outside. However, at that moment, the villain came crashing and breaking Kaiman's tea set, which annoyed him because it was ruining his me time. He said he wouldn't accept it, so he attacked the villain. Because of what he did, Koichi was confused because didn't Kaomon just mention not to judge people based on appearance? So the brothers said that's just how Kaomon was, somewhat self-centered. The brothers told him that since he didn't leave, he should fight the villain, and with the excessive number of arms it had, it wouldn't be a crime to cut off 2 or 3, but according to Aizawa, it wasn't like that. Kaomon tried to cut the villain's arm, but it didn't work, and he was punched as a counter. The brothers asked when he had become weaker, since his scythes couldn't cut the villain, so according to one brother, maybe he wasn't on the juice anymore, and though he was big, that was all there was to him. Then, they asked Aizawa if he was going to act, and he replied that he had a plan. First, he said, the brothers needed to distract the villain and give him an opening, but they replied that Aizawa was making it sound simple. Because of that, they used the Hata jump to distract the villain, and Aizawa said that from behind, he would blind it. Then, he had Kaomon hold it down, so Kaomon did it, but got elbowed by the villain. It removed Aizawa's binding cloth, but to its surprise, Koichi had finished charging and was ready to attack it from point-blank range. Aizawa gave Koichi the signal, so he attacked. Koichi explained that his quirk is slide and glide, and it shoots repulsion force from his hands and feet, which is why he often uses it to glide across the ground. When he also uses his back, he can jump a little, and he can focus his power in his palm and shoot it. He thinks that what happens is that it condenses the energy around his body into a force. Then, we return to the present, and Koichi said that he calls that move the Crawler's SGB, Shooty Go Blam. A single well-placed full power blast is enough to annoy a large villain, and he said that just as he thought, it couldn't do anything more. According to Aizawa, he was perfect bait, while one of the Hata brothers said that the Octopunk was pretty mad. According to Kaomon, it was a squid, so one of the Hatas asked if he was sure. On the other hand, Aizawa praised Koichi and told him to keep the villain busy and buy them time. Then, he charged forward with the brothers. They surrounded the villain using Aizawa's binding cloth, and Koichi looked surprised that they managed to do it. They hung the villain on the warehouse door, and Aizawa said that it had given them trouble, and they should call the authorities. One of the Hatas said okay and ordered Kaomon to get his phone. Koichi said that the enemy was very strong, so he asked if anyone was hurt, and Aizawa replied that he just had a dislocation, but it was no big deal. Because of that, Koichi said that if that was the case, he would leave, but Aizawa stopped him. Kamayan was poking Aizawa, saying that it looked like there was someone again treating people like villains, and he called Aizawa a jerk. Aizawa replied that he hadn't called anyone a villain, but Koichi was a person of interest. According to the brothers, couldn't he just start with thanking them all for the help? while Koichi was speechless. Then, Aizawa told Kaomon to call the authorities because he was watching the crawler, so Kaomon replied that he would get his phone, but he didn't like being ordered around. However, he was suddenly pulled by the villain, which shocked him, so he told it that it had some nerve and to let him go. He was stabbing it while saying this, so someone told him not to shake the villain, and because of what he did, the support where it was hanging cracked. In the next scene, it was completely destroyed along with the entire warehouse, so the villain escaped and ran away. The brothers had nothing to say about what happened, and Kaomon said it wasn't his fault, but the two told him to be quiet and chase the villain. In another place, someone saw the trail left by the villain, and he said that the code name of that specimen was Octoid, so he wondered what language that was, but before long, he realized it was a combination of octopus and squid. It apparently started as a cephalopod quirk, then it was given augmented speed and strength, so he said it had been modified into a real bruiser. He was looking at the appearance of the Octoid, and he inferred that it could deliver a nasty barrage of blows, just like him. At that moment, the Octoid chased him, but it received rapid attacks from him, and he said that was the perfect counter for its 8-arm rush. The Octoid fell because of that, and the man said it was sample time because he only needed a small amount of body fluids from it, and that was enough, so he really liked it when the job was this easy. He added that if Eraserhead, Koichi, and the Hata brothers had difficulty with that villain, they weren't all that. Then, suddenly a projectile hit his cheek and bounced off the wall. He realized it came from the Octoid, and he seemed unable to believe that he was bleeding because of it, and he said it was totally unacceptable. Because of that, he stomped on the villain's hand and told it that it needed to listen and listen well. He explained to the Octoid that he had given himself the scar on his face to match someone he respected. It was a way to give his personality some character and mark himself as that person's successor. However, if a little scum like the Octoid could give him a small scar, then what was the point of his large scar? He was extremely annoyed by this and asked what they were going to do about it. Then, he showered it with rapid jabs, straights, and hooks, causing it to fall again. Because of this, he also had blood on his arms, and he seemed unable to believe that was his limit, and he was annoyed that he couldn't kill the Octoid in one round. He asked it if it was listening, and he told it that in 10 seconds from that moment, he would accelerate again and stomp its head like a jackhammer, and if it was terrified, that was good, and it should think about that before it died. He started counting down to 1, and he was about to step on the Octoid's head when Koichi suddenly arrived and told him to watch out and get away from the Octoid because a hero was coming. The man escaped, and in the next scene, the brothers were shocked that the Octoid was severely beaten, and one of them even asked if octopuses had bones that could be broken. Aizawa replied that he didn't know and he didn't care, while Koichi wondered where the man went because he was just there a moment ago. In the next scene, Aizawa was talking with Tsukuchi, who said that concerning the Octoid, there was still no information about the person who beat up the villain and escaped, and there were no reports from other heroes either. He added that based on the modus operandi, it could be the work of the Narahata Vigilante, and Aizawa agreed, but it was hard to say at that point because he was thinking about how Koichi had panicked. He also said that he would carefully watch the vigilante that Tsukuchi was talking about, and at that moment, someone called his name. It was Koichi, who asked him if he was out on patrol and said that he looked hard at work. He also asked Pop Step if he could talk to Aizawa because they had become somewhat friends the other day, but it seemed the Erasure hero didn't want to. Koichi said he was a bit scary, so Pop Step asked what his point was, while Tsukuchi wondered about what Koichi had said, and Aizawa was leaving while saying that Koichi might have mistaken him for someone else. In the next scene, Koichi met up with his friends and had drinks with them. One introduced himself as Akira, the bass player of the Mad Hatters. Another was Hiroto, the keyboard player, and the drummer's name was Daiki. Koichi also introduced himself as a friend of the three, so the women with him introduced themselves as well. The first was Rin, a sophomore at Narahata Women's College. Next to her was someone named Hina, followed by Kaori, and the last was Kazuha. There was a guy who was surprised that the women were all the same age, and he said it wasn't obvious, which made Kaori ask what he meant by that. At that moment, Kazuha was watching Koichi, thinking if he could be any more awkward. He couldn't even find a chance to join the conversation, and he shouldn't just laugh to be polite. Then, Kaori tapped her on the shoulder, asking for help with fixing her makeup. They went to the bathroom, and they immediately took off their wigs, where we learned that Kazuha was actually Pop Step, because Kaori called her by that name when asking her for help to be sprayed with antiperspirant. Kaori added that she always sweats when she drinks, and she apologized to Pop Step because she knew it was a weird request. We learned that Kaori is Midnight, when Pop Step stated how important her hero work was to her. In the next scene, we went back to the past, to Koichi's house, where he told Pop Step that he was going to a mixer with the Mad Hatters, who would be meeting a group of women from the women's college. The leader of the group wasn't going, so they were looking for a decent guy to replace him. Pop Step said it was ridiculous, because who would be a moron willing to be a seat filler? However, Koichi ignored that and asked her what hoodie he should wear. She got angry and yelled at Koichi, asking who would wear an All Might hoodie on a date. Koichi realized that his identity as the crawler might be exposed, and that couldn't happen. Pop Step pleaded with him to wear normal clothes, because they would both be in trouble if he was exposed. In the next scene, Koichi went out with the other members of the Mad Hatters, and Pop Step was following them. At that moment, she was surprised by a woman who asked if she was Pop Step from the Nerafest, so she asked who the woman was. The woman introduced herself as the R-rated hero Midnight, and they had met at the first Nerafest, so Pop Step recognized her. She asked Pop Step if she was following someone, and Pop Step told her what Koichi was going to do. So Midnight learned about Koichi's plans, but Pop Step said she didn't care. She was just on standby to make sure Koichi didn't do anything dumb, which made Midnight tease her, implying the love of youth. At that moment, Midnight noticed something and asked Pop Step if there would be women from Narahata Women's College at the mixer, so Pop Step said there would be based on what she heard. Midnight thought for a moment before asking Pop Step if she could help her, which left Pop Step completely clueless. Nevertheless, she seemed to agree, because Midnight called her staff and told them to make sure there were 2 empty seats at the mixer. In the next scene, we saw 2 women walking on the sidewalk, and they were approached by a man in a car. Then, they were surrounded by the Midnight boys, who flirted with them, and because of that, they called Rin and canceled going to the mixer, so Rin delivered the news to Hina, saying there were substitutes anyway, whatever that means. At that moment, Midnight and Pop Step introduced themselves to them as Kaori and Kazuha, who were also sophomores at Narahata Women's College, and asked if they could join them. Then, we went back 1 week ago, inside the Recycle Shop Hopper's store, where they were discussing mixers, because there was testimony suggesting that many of the instant villains from the previous week had attended mixers with female college students before they started to rampage. The 2 talking were Aizawa and Tsukuchi, and what Aizawa understood was that there were casual gatherings where everyone got drunk, and they might be looking for action, so he said that was the perfect situation for a pusher to slip a sample of the drug to an unwitting victim. Tsukuchi replied that was correct, and they had narrowed it down to several groups and clubs from local colleges that tend to plan those mixers, and they wanted Aizawa's help to investigate such events in the Narahata area. However, Aizawa apologized because he was going to pass on this, since if they were dealing with college kids, and he wasn't the person for that. He added that not to mention, festivals, parties, and dinners weren't his thing either, because they required too much energy, which made Ichiro ask if Aizawa was picky about the jobs he chose. According to Aizawa, he knew the perfect person who could help, which made Tsukuchi wonder who it was. We returned to the present, and Midnight said all the boys were in the clear because they knew them from the Narafest, and the only one left was Rin Yuratezawa, the party planner and their target, and she is definitely a person of interest because she was part of more than one of the mixers in question. Then, she instructed Pop Step to talk to Hina as Kazuha. She should just make small talk with her and keep her attention, so that Midnight could focus on monitoring Rin. They should do that now. And when they returned to their companions, Midnight apologized to the guys for making them wait, and she asked if everyone was getting their drink on, while the guys suggested they play a game or something. Midnight replied that there shouldn't be anything too scandalous yet because it was still early, while Pop Step was making small talk with Hina and told her that it was a strange experience because it was her first time. According to Hina, she always just accompanied Rin, and she always felt out of place. Pop Step replied that she understood that, and she asked what kind of friend Rin was to Hina. Hina's only answer was that they were always together, while for Rin, she wasn't enjoying what was happening. She called the Mad Hatters losers because they were a band that toured department stores, and she didn't know anything about the wet noodle sitting in front of her, who was Koichi. She added that her thing was socializing, like bringing people together, planning stuff, and she was even called Miss Popular in the Yarutezawa network. But it was empty flattery to her, because before she knew it, she had become the eternal friend of a friend, used by people when they needed something. Now, there were even women she didn't know crashing her party, and it was weird because one had taken command of the ship and everyone was happy. Why was she even there? And in the next scene, she stood up, which worried Hina. Koichi asked her if she was going to the bathroom and told her not to fall in, which made someone tell him to have some class. Rin replied that she was going to vomit, but she suddenly collapsed, which worried Koichi. He said that she apparently wasn't joking about throwing up, so Rin thought she sucks, and who would want to date a vomit girl? To her surprise, Koichi held her by the shoulder and asked if she was okay, and if she had hurt herself when she fell. Midnight said they should help Rin lie down and put a pillow under her head, so Pop Step said she would ask the staff for help. Akira asked about the vomit on the floor, so Koichi said he had a towel and he would mop up most of it before the staff arrived. He even made eye contact with Rin as he was about to wipe her vomit, and he told her not to worry because he was a pro at this. Rin seemed to blush because of that, which made Pop Step look envious, and Midnight worried about her. Hina was shocked by what happened, and she ran away while taking the towel that had been used to wipe the vomit, which surprised everyone. Rin was among those surprised, and Koichi said maybe she was throwing away the towel, but it could still be used after being washed thoroughly. Hina went straight to the women's restroom and entered a stall. She couldn't accept the fuss they were making over her Rin, because only she should be able to care for Rin, and she appeared to be sucking on the towel. She added that especially Koichi, who was looking at Rin with bedroom eyes. She wouldn't allow it, and Koichi wouldn't get away with it. And as she was saying this, she took out a trigger. In the next scene, we move to Rin, who shyly said that her family thought she was the popular social butterfly type. But she is not actually famous, because people only approached her when they had problems, and she was expected to plan things. She knew that was how things were, but she just played dumb, because if she acknowledged it, she would come across as super annoying. She also apologized to Koichi for being weird that day, and said she was a real wet blanket, and she had let her guard down. She added that she was so messed up, and asked what Koichi was going to do with her. According to Pop Step, Rin didn't seem 100% yet, so why don't she stop exerting herself and lie down for a while? And didn't Koichi agree? According to Midnight, she thought they were all fine, and they should let their feelings flow to their heart's content. Let it ooze out from their bodies and souls, because what else was the purpose of youth? The guys were stunned at that moment, so they asked what was happening, why the women were paying attention to Koichi, and why Kaori was edging them on like a narrator. Koichi was looking at them as if asking for help, but Akira said they wouldn't help him. Then, Koichi asked what happened to one of the women, because she hadn't returned yet. Midnight realized he was referring to Hina, and she was shown fixing herself in the bathroom. Koichi added that she had thrown away the towel earlier, but wondered what she was doing now. At that moment, Hina returned, but it seemed her companions didn't recognize her. Koichi even mentioned that she looked different from before, so she said it was too hot for a sweater. Rin also said that Hina cuts loose every now and then, and Hina added that was right, and she was just slow to rev up, but now that her switch had flipped, she was all in, if Koichi got what she meant. Because of that, someone said that another woman was making a beeline for Koichi, which Pop Step didn't seem to like. Then, Pop Step dragged Midnight to the bathroom and asked if she was going to arrest the two women. Midnight replied not quite, because they were just suspects, but what she was seeing was a different sort of action. So for now, she would continue gathering intel while enjoying the mixer, and while at it, she suggested that Pop Step make moves on the person she liked, but she refused. At that moment, a server brought additional drinks to the mixer group, and Hina said to put them down and she would serve everyone. The server appreciated that, while someone asked who ordered them, but no one knew, and someone even said to just go with it. Little did they know, Hina had already taken out the trigger, and as she poured it into the drinks, she thought that Koichi was just acting nice to get close to Rin, but under the skin, he was just a rotten apple to the core, because all men were beasts deep down, and that was a lesson she needed to teach Rin. Then, we moved to the recycle shop hoppers, where they were discussing other types of trigger. According to Tsukauchi, there was one connected to the instant villains who attended mixers, and notably, the victims were law-abiding citizens who had no memory of being dosed. He added that forced drugging up to that point was likely performed via injection from bee stingers, so if it's not injections, then perhaps the suspect mixed it into drinks and made the victim drink it. Aizawa understood and said that basically, they were being roofied. In the next scene, we return to the mixer, and Hina offered Koichi beer, but he refused because he was underage, so the other guys took it. Hina then tried to offer Koichi cola and ginger ale, but Pop Step refused for him because she said he didn't like bubbly drinks. Koichi said that was correct, but wondered how Pop Step, whom he thought was Kazuha, knew that, while others accepted the cola and ginger ale. Hina said that was fine, and Koichi should just tell her what drink he wanted, and as she was saying this, she was pouring trigger into the drinks. However, the server took all the drinks because they were actually for another table, but they already drank a few. Hina became worried, while Akira said his eyes were feeling funny, and something shot out from them and splashed into the beer on the table. The same happened with Daiki and Hiroto because their quirks were going wild. They weren't the only ones affected, but also other customers, so Midnight asked if there were villains inside the restaurant, and Koichi said there weren't any, but people's quirks seemed to be out of control, so someone should already call the authorities. Pop Step had done that, while Koichi shouted to people that whether they were affected or not, they should remain calm because heroes were on their way. He also told the women to stay back because it could be dangerous, which endeared Rin to him, much to Hina's dislike. Then, she grabbed a beer and forcefully tried to make Koichi drink it, though he didn't know why. At that moment, Midnight stood up, which Koichi noticed, and she had a serious look on her face. She found the current situation similar to the mass outbreak of instant villains in the past spring. At that time, she was on the streets, but now they were indoors, and it was stuffy due to poor ventilation. Most of the victims and bystanders had been drinking, so of course they were panicking. In other words, it was her time to shine, and as she said this, she took off her sweater and greeted the guys. We were informed that Midnight was an R-rated hero, whose quirk was Somnambulist, where the scent she released gave her control over the actions and physical state of others, mostly men. She could persuade, pacify, and put other people to sleep. Then, she said, now that the men were dozing off, it was time for the women to talk. She started with Hina, asking her how she got the trigger, why she used it, and if she had used it before, saying she had a lot of questions to answer. However, she needed to know why Hina thought that way, so she asked her why she resorted to it. Hina replied that it was because Rin was always hanging out with guys, and she didn't like that. She said she hadn't done anything wrong, and she was about to inject herself with trigger. This shocked Pop Step, but Midnight stopped Rin and said she understood why she did it. Then, she put Hina to sleep and told her not to worry, because she was always an ally of women who had lost their way, which made Pop Step cheer her on. While hugging Hina, she added that personally, Youth Gone Wrong was her favorite flavor, which made Pop Step think she was a bit weird. Then she told Rin that she had advice for her. When Rin arranged only singles mixers, people get the wrong idea, so she should build her base by hosting some ladies' nights too. In the next scene, we return to the Hata brothers' shop, and Tsukauchi said they were in the process of interviewing victims of the latest villain outbreak, but he would just say that Midnight's presence helped bring a smooth end to the outbreak. Aizawa said he couldn't agree more, because Midnight was the perfect candidate to reach those students and earn their trust, calling her the ideal adult in the room. Midnight said she had also disguised herself as a student, which surprised Aizawa, so she asked if that was a problem, but he said it wasn't. Because of that, the brothers teased him about his reaction, and Ichiro even asked if that wasn't rude to Midnight. At Koichi's house, he told Pop Step about the chaos at the end of the mixer, and he had heard that Midnight showed up and saved the day. He added that it seemed trigger had been mixed into people's drinks, so he asked if Pop Step could imagine people being drugged, and there must have been a real scoundrel there last night. Pop Step asked him the favor of not getting caught up in such disasters, but what had happened. Then, Koichi told her about the women, which made Pop Step curious. Koichi said that on the whole, they were really strange and even scary. He wondered what was wrong with them, and he blames it on the alcohol. Pop Step asked if he was referring to all women when he said, on the whole, and if there wasn't even one charming and respectable woman among them. Koichi replied that there wasn't, and every single one of them was terrifying. So Pop Step asked if he wanted to think more carefully about his answer. In the next scene, we move to Midnight, who had captured a group of pig villains, and someone called her. It was Pop Step, whom she thanked and asked what was happening. Pop Step said there was a villain chasing Koichi, but before she could finish saying his name, she just said that someone was chasing a person she knew. Midnight replied that it sounded bad, so she asked where they were, and Pop Step said they were in front of Narahata Station, and the police were often slow to respond there. She said she had also tried to call Captain Celebrity, but he was busy with other work, so Midnight said she would call a local hero. At the recycle shop Hoppers, Aizawa received a call from Midnight, but he refused because he still had a meeting, but Midnight asked if a nearby villain didn't take priority. She added that the villain was coming toward Aizawa, so he should get ready, which made Aizawa confirm if it was really coming his way. Then, we returned to the villain chase that Pop Step had called Midnight about, and Koichi was telling people to move back because the villain was dangerous and had gone off the rails. The Hata brothers saw him and recognized him. Koichi tried using his shooty go blam on the villain to lure it toward Eraserhead, causing the villain to become more enraged with him because of that, and it became even faster in chasing him. So he asked Aizawa if he could handle the villain from there. In an instant, the villain was tied up in Aizawa's binding cloth, while the brothers asked why Koichi was bringing villains to them, and what does he have against their humble shop. Koichi replied that he had heard it was like Aizawa's offshoot agency, and he asked if he was wrong. Aizawa answered that he wasn't wrong, and that was about right, but the brothers didn't agree with that. Then, Tsukauchi arrived and said he had heard about the villain in the area. The brothers greeted him, and Ichiro asked if that was the troublemaking tank engine they had tied up. At the same time, Koichi was saying goodbye, and Tsukauchi asked who he was, so Jiro said he was just a local student who had helped them. However, before finally leaving, Koichi spoke to Aizawa and told him that Pop Step would be angry if she found out about the shooty go blam, so they should keep it a secret, but Aizawa didn't care, while Tsukauchi was wondering what they were talking about. In the next scene, Aizawa and Tsukauchi discussed the new orally administered trigger from the mixer incident the other day, and Tsukauchi said they had analyzed it, and it turned out to be less effective than the old form and lacked the psychotropic element. He said this meant that the oral doses weren't meant to turn people into full-blown villains, and it made it easier to spread it on the streets as a casual designer drug that might very well be suited to the current goal of the villain factory, so he asked what that was. He explained that they had seen a sharp decline in instant villain breakouts just before summer, while there was a steady rise of remodeled villains popping up here and there. Aizawa asked if they were like Kamayan and the Octo Jerk, whom they couldn't agree on whether it was an octopus or a squid. Aizawa said that they're now shifting their focus to bioengineered remodeled villains, so he wondered if the new trigger was designed to showcase potential candidates. Ichiro asked if the weak trigger made people's quirks go wild. Would the bad guys see that, kidnap those people, and remodel them? While Jiro asked if it was like an assembly line. Tsukauchi replied that it was more about mass-producing villains, hence, the villain factory. However, according to Jiro, it was just Eraser's wild theory, while Ichiro said that after the crab route was shut down, maybe someone stepped in to profit from the drugs. Tsukauchi replied that he didn't think so, because based on the testimony of their suspect at the mixer, the person distributing the new oral trigger and the man who destroyed evidence on the crab route in Osaka were one and the same. Aizawa asked if that was the guy with the acceleration quirk, and Tsukauchi said their investigation had led them to a place where the deals were happening, but it had been cleared out, and the villain had gotten ahead of them. Ichiro asked if it was like the crab business, and pointed out that the villain was good at escaping them, so he suggested to go for the head when it comes to this snake. Tsukauchi said that was correct, but from the chemical composition of the packaging of the new drugs, they thought the small batch was imported from the greater Asian market, which surprised Ichiro that the head of the snake was in China, and he said Japanese cops and heroes would have difficulty doing anything about that. According to Aizawa, publicly yes, but he could go to China and handle it quietly. The brothers and Tsukauchi were stunned by that, and someone was about to ask him if that was illegal legally speaking, but Aizawa said he was just joking. Jiro said Aizawa seemed serious about it, while Ichiro said he was playing in the gray zone like them. Aizawa whispered to himself that he knew it wasn't good when he let those outlaws influence him for the worse. The brothers didn't like that, and Ichiro even said he was as rude as they come. Then, we moved to Hong Kong, to a very busy night market, where there was a hooded man carrying a small pouch and heading to a building. Upon entering, he immediately asked if there was dim sum because he was looking for some grub. The old person there told him it was an apothecary, but the hooded man reasoned that food is the best medicine according to people, which made the old person ask if he wasn't from there and where he was from. The man replied that he was from a distant place, and he had turned onto Nathan Road 7 times. The old person looked at him more carefully and told him to follow to the back. The old person took him to a back room and asked what he was specifically after. He replied that it wasn't drugs, just information. So the old person said that if he wasn't looking for drugs, he wasn't a customer. The old person added that he had been having trouble lately, so the password was frequently changed, and while saying this, was ringing a bell. He added that the hooded man had used an old password, so he wasn't a customer, and the hooded man said the old person was cautious, which was fine with him. At the same time, 3 tough-looking men came out of a door, and the shortest one, who seemed to be the leader, said they weren't good to window shoppers in that place. He grabbed the hooded man by the shoulder, so the hooded man held his hand, and when the short man tried to stab him, the hooded man grabbed the hand holding the knife. The hooded man broke the man's arm, making him scream in pain, and as he fell, the hooded man said the old person seemed to need a new password and a new bodyguard. The other 2 men who were with the one the hooded man had taken down prepared to attack, but he pleaded with them not to be like that, because as he said, he was only there for information. The old person asked who he was, and he replied that he was just a traveler taking some time off, which made the old person think he wasn't police, so maybe a private eye, or maybe a hero. But after a short while, the old person seemed to realize who he really was. He was Supin Saikyun, the Hyperquad Fist, aka a clock. The old person said he should be dead because his face was split and his quirk was stolen. A clock replied that the old person was right, and that man had been dead for a long time. Nevertheless, here he was, revealing himself, making us find out that he is Knuckle Duster. In the next scene, we moved to the hospital, and Rapt said he had figured out the trick to playing the guitar, so he tried it, but according to Tamao, he still looked kinda jittery. Moyuru told him not to overdo it because he would get cramps, but Rapt told him to be quiet and listen. He started rocking and rolling after saying that, but suddenly got cramps, causing him to yell in pain, and Moyuru asked him teasingly how the nail cramps happened. Rapt replied that all nerves were connected, but Moyuru said that wasn't true, because they didn't have tails. He added that Tamao shouldn't make them do everything, that she should try playing the guitar by herself for her rehabilitation. And as he was saying this, he offered Tamao some apples. Tamao took the apple, and she said she didn't really like playing the guitar, and she only used it because she knew it annoyed her father. Because of that, Rapt asked why she didn't continue annoying her father, but Soga took the guitar, which surprised Rapt, and he started playing. Moyuru was surprised that Soga had a knack for it, and Rapt said he used to play, which made Moyuru ask why he stopped. Rapt replied that Soga had smashed up his guitar during a fight, and that was it, which made Moyuru wonder if he had a short fuse. Then, Soga returned the guitar to Tamao and said it was out of tune earlier. He explained that a lot of people don't even have any instruments, so since Tamao has that privilege, she should play. Rapt teased Tamao by telling her that's what she would get, but Tamao told him to be quiet. At that moment, Knuckle Duster arrived and told the men it had been a long time since he saw them. Moyuru and Rapt became afraid, while Tamao seemed disgusted by what she saw. She said her father's beard was disgusting, and he replied that he had been roughing it for a long time. According to Soga, he didn't care where Knuckle Duster went, but he just couldn't leave his family. Tamao replied that it was okay, because her father was only good for taking up space, while Soga said whatever because he was leaving. However, Knuckle Duster apologized and asked him if he could stick around a bit longer because he still had an errand. Soga paused, and Tamao was waiting for his answer. He seemed annoyed and said he wasn't the one who should be apologized to, but Knuckle Duster said he was right. Then, Knuckle Duster apologized to Tamao, saying he would just catch up with an old friend and would be back soon. Before he left, Tamao requested that he shave his grimy beard. Tamao looked sad after her father left, and Soga told her again to play the guitar. She wondered why, but Soga said she should just play anything and make noise because she knew it would tick off her jerk of a dad. Tamao happily agreed, and she started playing, which could be heard all the way outside the hospital, and Soga was watching to see how Knuckle Duster would react. In another place, a man thanked Knuckle Duster for coming there, and he said he might be out of touch, but he didn't trust internet communication. Knuckle Duster said he was the same, and he was always a fan of face-to-face meetups, so he could hear the voice, see the face, and keep his fists within range of the person he was talking to. The man said that was one way to put it, but it wasn't a hero-like thing to say. Knuckle Duster asked if that was so, because he wasn't a hero, which made the man remember that Knuckle Duster now goes by the name Mr. Kuroiwa, and he asked if he had something for him. Knuckle Duster handed him a cigarette box with an SD card, and said it was a client list straight from a dealer in Hong Kong, and he would see Japanese importers there. The man said that was good, and not that he doubted Knuckle Duster, but how good was that intel? Knuckle Duster replied that his source had been in that business for a while, and it would be bad for his reputation if people found out he was being used by another underworld gang. If that meant no more beatdowns from people posing as customers, then he was more than willing to cooperate. In that spirit, he had promised his source that he would just return until that whole nasty business was settled, but the man said that wouldn't be necessary. Because of that, the man talking to Knuckle Duster said he understood that the source also wanted it to end quickly. Knuckle Duster left, saying the man and the police should take over the investigation from there, and he would be in touch if he got anything else. The man stopped him and said he knew Knuckle Duster was in a hurry, but could he ask him something? He asked what they should do if they encountered someone with a quirk like a clock's, and if he knew who it was. Knuckle Duster replied that he had no clue, but if they faced that villain again, they shouldn't hesitate and just shoot him. The man said his younger colleagues had tried that, but Knuckle Duster said they should just forget about warning shots and aim straight for his vitals. They needed to catch the guy off guard, or else he'll just dodge. The man said for better or worse, they weren't in the business of shooting people because it looked bad for their public image. Knuckle Duster replied then the police couldn't do it, and they needed someone who could work around the law. He added that taking down people like that seemed to be the reason why he was there. The man talking to him smiled because of that, and said he was almost sorry he asked. In another place, another train-quirked rampage was happening, and it was chasing Koichi again. Pop Step tried to find Aizawa at the Hata brothers' place, but he wasn't there, so she mentioned that it sure was a pain when Aizawa wasn't at his home base. Ichiro said their shop wasn't Aizawa's home base, and he would call the Erasure Hero, so Pop Step should just calm down. Jiro told Koichi to lead the Rampager in circles for now, while Pop Step said she would call Midnight. Because of that, the brothers mentioned that she should tell Midnight she could stop by any time, but Pop Step told them to give it a rest. While this was happening, Koichi continued to let the Rampager chase him, and Knuckle Duster was watching him from afar using binoculars, smiling at what his protege was doing. Koichi seemed to notice him, asking if he was the one he saw, but Pop Step told him to focus on running away. Because of that, Koichi said it might have just been his imagination, and Pop Step added that if it had been Knuckle Duster, he would have helped them. While this was happening, Knuckle Duster was thinking if there was anything else he needed to do, and when he touched his beard, he remembered that he needed to shave. In the next scene, Pop Step and Koichi seemed to be in a hurry to go somewhere, with Pop Step telling Koichi to speed up, but Koichi explained that it was too dangerous to go full speed without his pads. Aside from that, he mentioned that it was really cold that day, but Pop Step just told him again to hurry up. At that moment, someone saw them and called their attention, and it was Captain Celebrity, carrying Makoto, who said their meeting was about to begin. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Captain Celebrity. Pop Step apologized for being late because she had just come from school, while Koichi added that he got held up because of his part-time job. Makoto then asked if the two of them wanted to join her and Captain Celebrity, and the two accepted the offer. The pro hero carried them as he flew, and Koichi commented that flying was definitely faster, but a lot colder. Before long, they arrived at the Maricane department store, where a Christmas sale was ongoing. The scout girls cheerfully greeted Captain Celebrity, while Koichi said he felt cold and asked if Pop Step and Makoto weren't freezing, but the two said they weren't. Koichi even pointed out that Captain Celebrity wasn't wearing a coat, yet didn't seem cold. The captain said not to worry, and that the secret lay in his quirk, something he would explain to Koichi. He explained that the aerodynamic field around his body doesn't push him forward while flying. Rather, it protects him from heat, cold, and physical harm. If he expanded it, it could cover the girls flying with him. Koichi asked if it only worked on girls, and the captain replied, not exactly, but told him to imagine if they were all under one blanket. Would he want to huddle with a guy like him? Koichi said that if it was with Captain Celebrity, then sure, because it is better than freezing. Makoto noted, that's strictly off the record, prompting Koichi to ask if it would hurt the captain's public image. Makoto replied that it wasn't really that. It's just that they didn't want to make the ins and outs of his quirk public. She was about to explain the weakness, but Koichi interrupted and said he got it, understanding that pro heroes have to be careful about those kinds of things. Then, they began the meeting, and Makoto said that with this, their Nerafest business for the year was wrapped up, and she congratulated everyone. Now, it was time for their Christmas party. They decorated the room, the pizza arrived, fans of Pop Step came in, and even Santa was there. Mio began the countdown, and everyone greeted each other with Merry Christmas. Everyone was so happy. Santa even gave out gift certificates. Captain Celebrity was flexing, some were eating, and others were stargazing. Before long, people got tired and fell asleep. Koichi noted that Cap had fallen asleep, and Popstep said he was a hard worker. Mio said she remembered Popstep dozing off in 1 or 2 meetings before. At that moment, Captain Celebrity woke up and asked if the party was over, and said it seemed like it was time for his next job. However, Makoto told him to relax, saying that it was his time to rest, because she didn't book him for anything until New Year's Eve. Captain Celebrity agreed, but told Makoto he was ready to give it his all that year, and the next, and so on, because that's what life was about. Makoto said it was true, and they had a lot lined up in the next 6 months for his homecoming. But after that, they'd need to take it easy. Captain Celebrity was surprised about the homecoming because he still had lawsuits. Makoto said his short sabbatical in Japan would end soon, because by year's end, the lawsuits in court would be wrapped up, and with that, Captain Celebrity's license would be reinstated in all the states, and they were also settling the restraining orders. Jubei, Koichi, and Popstep seemed clueless, and Makoto added that most of the lawsuits against Captain Celebrity amounted to some kind of entrapment, which surprised the captain. Makoto gave examples such as honey traps and paparazzi trouble, which she called frivolous litigation. Truthfully, she said, Captain Celebrity was an easy mark. In fact, she had evidence to against him, if it came to that. Because of it, Captain Celebrity asked her to be a friend and ally, not an enemy. They asked Captain Celebrity if he was going home, and he said that would be good. But just because he was going home didn't mean he was welcome there, because things were still rocky with his wife. Makoto said she had scheduled his return for when his wife gave birth, thinking it was a good chance to talk about where they were headed. This shocked the captain, and he couldn't believe he was going to be a father. He said that was the first time he'd heard about it, and Makoto explained that when she first met Pamela, she was told by her that while she knew the captain had a good heart, he was too soft-hearted and not in a position to raise a child, so she decided to raise the baby alone. Captain Celebrity asked if Pamela really said that, and Makoto said if he wanted the whole transcript. It started with that no-good, worthless idiot. Captain Celebrity said he believed her and said no need to add insult to injury. Koichi asked why Pamela changed her mind if she had said all those things, so Makoto said maybe it was because of what she told her. Popstep asked what it was, and Makoto replied to leave it to her. Koichi, Popstep, Mio, and you congratulated Captain Celebrity, saying he looked like he didn't have anything left to worry about. It seemed like it was finally sinking in for the captain that he was going home and becoming a dad. He said he couldn't ask for a better Christmas gift, and as he said it, he hugged a scout girl close to his face. The scout girls backed away, so he clarified that he meant it in a wholesome way. Makoto said that Captain Celebrity had a knack for putting his foot in his mouth, and Popstep mentioned they all knew that. In the next scene, Makoto sent the 3 scout girls home in a taxi, telling them to bring the change and receipt to the next meeting. After they left, she said she was looking forward to the new year. Captain Celebrity said the kids were adorable, and he'd be fine having 3 children running around the house. He asked Makoto what she thought, But Makoto replies that that sounded like a conversation for Captain Celebrity and his wife, because if he asked her, it would only lead to more misunderstandings. The captain said he didn't like that, and just then, a huge flyer startled everyone. It grabbed the taxi with the scout girls inside, and someone said if they fell from that height, they'd be doomed, and the girls were shown crying. Captain Celebrity said, "Fear not," and that he would defeat the villain and rescue the scout girls. He chased the villain, saying good thing he made it in time, but suddenly, the speedster villain said he wouldn't let it be that easy while he pressed a blast button on his phone. The hero was shocked when something flashed from the villain's stomach, and then it exploded. Makoto, Pop Step, and Koichi were all in shock, along with the crowd. In the aftermath, Captain Celebrity was seen with torn clothes, carrying the 3 scout girls. He was bleeding from the explosion and checked if the girls were okay, but they were just crying. Koichi checked on the captain and was shocked to see him bleeding, but the captain hadn't even noticed. People asked what had happened, and someone said Captain Celebrity had been hurt. Makoto stepped into the crowd, saying she was with him, and the captain didn't want any photos taken because he looked his worst. Makoto's eyes widened, but she laughed and asked if that was really his worst, because he never looked better, she said, which shocked him. From afar, the speedster villain watched, saying his flight and explosive combo could have been enough to dent the mighty Captain Celebrity. Still, he wondered could it really, since it looked like Captain Celebrity released a barrier during the blast and directed it toward the scout girls, leaving himself defenseless. That meant the barrier was the key to his seemingly thick hide, and he wasn't truly immortal. Now, the villain had more data to work with strategically. He added that he would try releasing more exploding villains and see if the captain could survive them. The scene shifts to Roppongi Minato Ward at Might Tower. Someone greets with Happy New Year and mentions that they both seem busy even during the holiday. It turns out to be All Might cheering for another year of working together with Naomasa. The latter responds that, of course, he appreciates it. However, he suddenly realizes something. He thinks their little meetings need to be put on hold for a while. All Might says he understands and that Naomasa shouldn't waste his time talking to him. But Naomasa insists that's not it. He explains there's just another urgent matter he needs to attend to. They received very important intel from informants on a particular case. Therefore, the investigation will continue at full speed and requires complete focus. All Might asks if this is the case related to drugs, the reason he was shot. He mentions he's concerned about him, while addressing him as his friend. He suggests that if the investigation goes south, he could just send a dispatch request. He says he could definitely go to help, and no one else would need to know about it. But Naomasa replies that's not possible, but he appreciates the sentiment. Meanwhile, in the next scene, Naomasa was speaking with Eraserhead at Hoppers. The investigation will begin by examining the list of import clients they've obtained, including their known associates. However, their issue is that from the beginning, the central figure of the villain factory always catches on when they start sniffing around, and because of that, this person escapes. And their getaway is extremely fast. When asked if more information is all they need to pin this person down, Jiro tells Eraserhead to help him out. He reaches into his pocket and takes out a USB drive meant for Detective Tsukachi. He says it contains historical data regarding the Narahata Vigilantes. This puzzles him. The scene flashes back to 1 week ago, where Koichi was photographed while fighting villains. Someone comments on how hardworking they are. The people being greeted are actually Pop Step and Koichi, who are facing Eraserhead. However, Pop Step denies being in the picture. According to Koichi, that the crawler is a champ. Jiro then states that playing dumb won't work if he's looking smug about it. Ichiro adds that he should just pick a story and stick to it. Midnight is also present at the meeting and says it's all right, since everything she sees there is just self-defense and citizens' arrests. Though she mentions those vigilantes had hurt many people early on. Pop Step denies having any connection to the old man who goes around punching people. Midnight responds that's okay. They'll just focus on everything after the summer. Anyhow, they should consider their logs to be in safe hands. Midnight thanks them for their help. She also informs them that they should know there's a good chance all those villains in Narahata are linked to a massive criminal enterprise. Therefore, the data they provided will surely help the authorities solve the case. Because of this, Pop Step says she's happy to help as much as she can. She admits she was a bit nervous that those pictures of her might get her in trouble with the police. Koichi adds that they also asked Makoto about it, who advised them to forget about the police and instead bring the intel to the heroes they know. Midnight agrees, saying that heroes are trying to be more accessible to the public while also looking the other way when possible. Now that they're done, she addresses Koichi as Mr. Manager. But she takes it back, saying to just give her regards to the mysterious vigilante if he happens to meet him. When she asks what his name is again, Koichi smiles and answers the Crawler. Eraserhead gets annoyed at this, so the siblings advise him to just go along with it. The scene returns to the present, where Naomasa has inserted the USB into his laptop and is surprised to find it contains pictures and a text-based journal. It's all about villain incidents in Naruhata from the POV of someone who is at the scene every time. It also includes attacks that were never formally documented, plus extra information about what happened before the police arrived. Naomasa asks where this data came from, and Eraserhead responds that he doesn't know. He says someone just gave it to Midnight, who then passed it to him. He adds that he has no idea who these vigilantes are. The Hata brothers on the side can't help but laugh at what he's saying. The scene shifts to Marikana department store, where a video is playing of Captain Celebrity rescuing the little sisters. It's reported that as the year ended, everyone was talking about this explosive mid-air rescue video. And the star of it is the American hero Captain Celebrity. Now, he has announced that soon, he'll be hanging up his cape in Japan and returning to his home country. A clip is shown where he apologizes for the sudden announcement, but says that was always the plan. Though it's difficult to leave the country, he has his own family to return to in the States. All the performers in Naruhata are watching this video. According to the report, now that this latest victory is under his belt, they expect Captain Celebrity to soar to new heights after all his experience in Japan. When Pop Step checks the original video clip of Captain Celebrity, she's shocked that it has reached 100 million views. This is even more than the number who watched him defeat the big monster. Looking at the comments, some people are saying he's the best hero ever and that All Might should watch his back. Mio adds that all the search terms are about Captain Celebrity, #Celebrity, Captain, CC Homecoming, Midair Explosion, and Ugly Hoodie. The scene continues with you mentioning that people are getting angry because they want to buy Captain Celebrity's hoodie, but it's sold out. And not just that, all of his merchandise is out of stock. Because of this, Makoto explains they simply can't keep up with the demand. Yu adds it's such a shame they don't have anything to sell, especially when he's so famous in the news right now. Suddenly, Makoto announces that there's another big piece of news for them. According to her, the farewell party they're planning for their boss at the end of March will no longer be held at the Naruhata community halls as originally planned. Instead, it will take place 500 meters in the air, with 50,000 people attending, at the Tokyo Sky Egg. This will be a massive event with the theme of cooperation between heroes from Japan and the US. Koichi is impressed and asks how she managed to plan all this. Captain Celebrity questions if Makoto is sure about this. She responds that she just had to twist a few arms, but she wouldn't let a business opportunity slip away. She pats her boss on the shoulder and says this is his last chance in Japan, so they're going to have him go out with a bang. The sisters Mio and Yu also mention that they should make this memorable, as people want to hear about how successful his time in Japan has been. Makoto then tells everyone that they, the Narufest kids, will also be part of the show. Everyone is in disbelief at this news. Pop Step asks if being part of the show means they'll be performing on the Sky Egg stage. The feathers behind her are shocked. Their audience at Narufest is usually only about 100 people. Pop Step further points out that half of those are their families and friends, so a more accurate count would be 50 people. Yu curiously asks what the maximum capacity of the Sky Egg is, and Pop Step answers 50,000. Everyone panics when they realize that's 1,000 times more people than their usual audience. They wonder what they're going to do now. The president answers that they should practice. It's time to train. The scene continues with Captain Celebrity calming them down, saying they don't need to change anything. In his opinion, their usual act is already good. Pop Step is pleased to hear this, but she insists that this is special, so they want to look extra cool up there. The feathers agree with her. Either way, Makoto says they can't give them too much stage time. And so the president of the East Naruhata High Dance Squad suggests transitioning from their song and dance for the Captain Celebrity theme to their old, standard Marikana remix. She then asks if that would be enough to fill the slot. Makoto mentions she'll also be talking to the Captain Celebrity Agency cheerleaders and the Narahata grassroots cheer team. So she asks if they could send representatives from the dance squad and band to attend that meeting. Koichi laughs, saying it feels just like old times. They don't waste any more time and immediately begin training under the leadership of the president. On the sidelines, Koichi is just cheering for the performers. Makoto is extremely busy, as is Captain Celebrity. Meanwhile, Pop Step is falling asleep over her homework due to exhaustion from balancing her studies and training. Koichi notices this while washing the dishes. In the city, a billboard about Captain Celebrity's final event and farewell party can be seen. It's right in the middle of a busy area, so many people are seeing it. In the office, Makoto is working on the hero guest list. They want the lineup to scream that these are the beloved heroes of Japan. The scene continues with Makoto speaking to Ingenium, who agrees to attend and mentions he'll bring the entire team I'd attend, if that's alright. Meanwhile, Endeavor doesn't seem interested in the event. When she asks Midnight, there's no hesitation in her response. Of course she'll be there. Yamada is thrilled to be invited, while Eraserhead answers that he'll only come if he has time. The hero guest list also includes Best Jeanist, the Lurkers, Fat Gum, Ed Shot, the Aqua Hero Gang Orca and his sidekicks, Airjet, Snipe, Death Arms and Manual, the Wild Pussycats, and Wash. Makoto has contacted all of them and thanks their agencies for accommodating her sudden request. While entering her house, she mentions she'll send a draft of the contract in the next few days. But she asks if it's okay to use the email address given by the person she's speaking with when they met the other day. When they agree, she thanks them again and says they'll keep in touch. Makoto breathes a sigh of relief when the call ends. But even though she's home and it's already night, her work isn't finished yet. Almost everyone is on board, but she still wants to pad out the lineup a bit more. She's thinking about adding some heroes from outside the metropolitan area. For her, All Might would be the biggest and best to get. Her brother then notices that she's home, but still busy with work. Meanwhile, Makoto says it's been a long time since she's seen him. He responds that he just stopped by to change clothes, but he'll be leaving again soon. He's even busier than before because of work. He notices that Makoto has been bringing her work home lately, so he reminds her not to overwork herself. She replies that it's crunch time, so she needs to hurry, and because of that, she'll need encouragement. Her brother smiles and says he knows she can always count on him. When Makoto thanks him, she slips in a question about whether he knows anyone at All Might's agency and if he could connect her with them. But he responds that it's not possible. The next day, Koichi uses his slide and glide quirk along with some new moves to reach his destination. He goes to a place where he's looking for Eraserhead, which turns out to be Hopper's. He says he's compiled all the records from his latest patrol and more. The Hata brothers mention that he's just been going around with the police lately. Ichiro thinks that since Midnight is in charge of this side of the operation, she would come if they called her. But Koichi doesn't want to bother her because she might be working. Jiro asks why he has no problem bothering them there. Koichi adds that Pop Step and Midnight are better friends. They're curious about where Pop Step is, and he answers that she's super busy preparing for their event. They then asked if he's referring to the thing for Captain Celebrity, the party at the Sky Egg. They're surprised that he's not helping with the preparations. But he was told that he's just getting in the way there, so he should just do his own thing. The siblings agree with Pop Step's opinion because he indeed doesn't seem helpful. The scene shifts to Detective Naomesa's office. Regarding the activity records from the Vigilantes, long story short, they were extremely useful and provided them with a lead. The person he's talking to is Eraserhead, and he explains that the records provided identifying information for some of the small-time criminals in Narahata and instant villains. He's already cross-referenced each one with the client list obtained from Hong Kong. And because of that, they were led to connections between people involved with local villains and drug dealers. What they're discussing is at the friends of friends level, but probing those ties gave them names. And almost half of those names work at or have access to Onimura Pharma Corp., a mid-size pharmaceutical company. Eraserhead is curious because this company isn't familiar to him. Naomesa explains that they're a manufacturer and wholesaler of drugs for the medical industry mostly, although they're not yet big enough to be a household name. Eraserhead asks if he thinks that place is the villain factory. Naomesa responds that it could just be an unwitting front. The factory might be leeching off Onimura's resources and infrastructure, just like it did with Kaniduge. In any case, that's the biggest lead they've gotten so far. The fact that they had to rely on anonymous tips and intel to get it. Detective Naomasa admits that as a member of law enforcement, it's somewhat embarrassing. But Eraserhead tells him not to sweat it. Someone agrees with this, and it turns out to be Fat Gum who suddenly enters. He says who cares if the source is shady. Naomasa should use whatever is given to him to get the job done, because all is well that ends well. Kaneko is with him and agrees as well. Eraserhead is surprised by their barging in, and so Naomasa explains that the two came all the way from Osaka to help them. The BMI hero Fat Gum says at your service, and according to Kaniashiki, she works for Osaka PD, but they can just call her Kaneko. Naomasa mentions that Officer Kaniashiki has been following that drug network for some time, as has Fat Gum. Eraserhead thinks Fat Gum is the perfect person to fight the remodeled villains they're going to face. And Fat Gum agrees. His body can definitely take it, and he's ready to fight. According to Kaneko, she handles the investigation, and Fat Gum, whom she calls Fat Yen, joins in when it's time to crack skulls. However, he says he can't always guarantee he'll arrive if a villain suddenly appears out of nowhere. He can't stick by her side at all times since his body is difficult to disguise for undercover work. And that's where Mr. Hero comes in, Kaneko adds. He'll back up Officer Kaniashiki as a battle-ready investigator. Kaneko is the investigator, Fat Gum is the fighter, and Eraserhead is both. Fat Gum says he'll jump in whenever he can, but it's reassuring that there's another brawler on their team. Kaneko agrees because she likes having a strong hero to protect her. Fat Gum is pleased by her comment, saying she probably enjoys teaming up with him all the time. But she responds that she didn't say big strong pork bun like him. Eraserhead just scratches his head at this exchange. Kaneko whispers that it's bad news because he can't banter to save his life. She's not sure about their team up. Fat Gum thinks she should handle the gags and let Eraserhead be the straight man. But Kaneko says that won't work. Her trademark Hika Crab shtick is the ultimate follow-up. She can't lead with that. But Fat Gum responds that it's not just funny at all. Irritated, Kaneko transforms into the Hika Crab. She tells him to say that to her claws. Fat Gum laughs and pleads with her not to snip and clip him. Eraserhead then asks if he needs to join in on this, and Naomasa answers no, because it's not part of the assignment. Anyway, Naomasa explains they'll coordinate with other bureaus to monitor the arrival and departure of people connected to Onimura Corporation, and the three of them will make direct contact with people connected to the company. He adds there's a high risk they'll encounter live villains, so it could be dangerous. Eraserhead smiles and says it's better for them if the villains show up themselves. Fat Gum is pleased because he's speaking his language, so he invites him for a high five. However, Eraserhead just stares at him. Kaneko gets excited and says it's time to investigate, so she invites them to join her. Kaneko and Eraserhead have changed their outfits. However, it's obvious that Eraserhead isn't comfortable with his getup. He asks if the tie is really necessary, and Kaneko responds that it's good practice. She says she doesn't know when he might need to put on a suit to apologize for a scandal someday. Eraserhead can't accept that and says it would never happen. Naomasa radios in that they're right behind them. They're ready to move if anything goes wrong. Eraserhead wishes that would happen, if that's what it takes for him to get home quickly. Anyway, it's go time, and Kaneko and Eraserhead begin their undercover operation. Besides suits, they also dress casually, as waiters, and even as hippies, just to interact with people connected to the company. Beyond that, they also become construction workers and tennis players just for the mission. They also go around promoting a grand opening, wear traditional Japanese clothes, and Eraserhead even becomes a robot for this. Meanwhile, Koichi is wandering around the city when he suddenly notices something. When he sees the distinctive hair of someone walking, he recognizes it's Kaneko. He wonders when she came to Tokyo. He thinks she's probably on a job for Kaniduge, but he's surprised when he notices that Eraserhead is the man with her. He thinks they probably know each other, and it's a small world indeed. Kaneko even has her arm around him. Suddenly, Koichi shouts and calls out to them. He sticks to the wall and says hi to them. He asks how they are, causing Kaneko to turn around. She recognizes him as Pop Step's friend, but Eraserhead says they're on the job, so she shouldn't pay attention to him. Koichi is puzzled that the two ignored him. That night, at Koichi's penthouse, Pop Step is inside. She's talking to someone on the phone, saying many of them are falling behind on the choreography, but the squad president can give them individual lessons. She assures them that they'll be ready in time. She's delighted to learn they'll be getting brand new costumes. She promises to get everyone's sizes at the next practice. However, when told it's urgent, she assures the caller that she'll get it right away and call them back. She reiterates that she'll do it as soon as possible, but the caller requests that she do it that same day, even if she calls them late. Just then, Koichi arrives and starts to tell her what he saw. However, before he can finish, Pop Step apologizes because she needs to call her teammates for Makoto. So Koichi falls silent. She first calls you, who assumed it's about practice time. But you already knows about the new costume, so Pop Step asks for her size and whether she and Mio have the same measurements. Noticing how busy she is, Koichi makes tea for them. Pop Step tells him to just leave it on the table and thanks him. She continues with her calls, next contacting the representative from East Narahata High Dance Squad. Pop Step is pleased to learn they already know everyone's sizes, which will save her time. That night, Koichi goes to the Hopper's recycling shop. They wonder why he came there, and he answers that Pop Step seems busy, so he doesn't want to bother her. The Hata brothers are surprised that because of this, he decided to bother them instead. Jiro remarks that Eraserhead is gone, but now Koichi has taken his place. Speaking of Eraserhead, Koichi mentions that he saw him with a woman he knows. They're curious about what she looks like, so Koichi wonders how to explain. Before long, Eraserhead also arrives there and says long time no see. He asks if they have anything weird to report and requests a black coffee. Because of what Koichi told them, the siblings immediately ask if it's true that he's dating an idol. Ichiro is extremely jealous about this. Meanwhile, Eraserhead wonders who told them that. Fast forward to the day that everyone had been preparing for. Everyone was welcomed to the Tokyo Sky Egg for Captain Celebrity's final show. The MC requested that everyone pay attention to the following announcement. Ticket holders were instructed to proceed to the entry gate and line up properly. Someone could be seen guiding the crowd to form two lines at the gate and also pointing out where merchandise could be purchased. It seemed there were still many people interested in Captain Celebrity's hoodie. The lines to enter were already long, and many were already waiting inside. Moments later, everything went quiet, and suddenly the lights flashed one by one on the stage. Ingenium, the turbo hero, appeared and demonstrated his quirk. The crowd was delighted to see him. On the other side, the high-heeled and curvaceous hero Midnight also entered. People couldn't believe seeing her there. Edshot and the fiber hero Best Jeanist arrived as well. Even the rabbit, dragon, and snake heroes, Mirko, Ryukyu, and Yawabami, were present. Airjet and Snipe were also there, along with Gang Orca, Death Arms, the Wild Pussycats, and Wash. They were said to be faster, stronger, and shining even brighter. With each quirk was more impressive than the last. This was the who's who of Japan's greatest heroes, according to the MC, Present Mike. The audience cheered enthusiastically because of all their appearances. Nevertheless, Present Mike told everyone to hold on to their seats because there was still one mighty invasive species about to enter. They were right, Present Mike said, because he was referring to the person soaring in from the US of A. The man whose flight quirk had sent him zooming up the American rankings. He had been top 10 material for 10 years since his debut. Present Mike hyped up the crowd to cheer for Captain Celebrity. Apparently, he had learned a lot during his entire year in Japan about the spirit of men and the soul of Japan. His male supporters were all behind him, cheering Rock on Chris. The Captain Celebrity Agency cheerleaders were also present. Present Mike added that it could be said this was no longer the same Captain Celebrity from 1 year ago. He had been reborn, and his evolution was impressive. This high flyer had made Japan his second home, but now he was preparing to take off. The cheerleaders tossed the little sisters, who were quickly caught by Captain Celebrity. He carried all three and slowly descended to the stage. The spotlight was focused on Captain Celebrity as he was presented to the crowd. The scene then shifted to Onimura Pharmaceutical. Inside a van were Eraserhead, Kaneko, and Fat Gum. In the back, Kaneko asked Fat Gum if he thought Captain Celebrity's event had already started. He answered that it probably had. That was likely the reason for the sounds of fireworks they heard. Kaneko wished she could have gone there, to which he said it was a shame she wasn't a hero. Nevertheless, She knew that Eraserhead and him had been invited. She thought that they should have shown up there as a trio act. Eraserhead questioned when he had joined this trio. He told them to accept that they had real work to do there, which was to hunt down the baddies. She regretted that the event happened on the same day as their big operation. Crap timing, she said. Someone then radioed their driver, Detective Tsukawachi, informing him that officers were already at the rear and service entrances. The tactical squad was also ready to enter the building. Because of this, their mission began. Kaneko got out of the van and went undercover. She went to the door and opened it using her ID badge. When it opened, the group, led by the detective, quickly entered. Flashback to their meeting, Tsukachi mentioned that their target was the R&D center of Onii-Chan Pharmaceutical. A research wing in the corner of the property rarely interacted with other departments in the building. Additionally, many individuals connected to villain attacks and the drug trade had been spotted entering and leaving there. Because of this, their leading theory was that it was the base of operations for the villain factory. On the day of the raid, they would force entry on suspicion of possession of unlawful substances and unlicensed medical practice. This was in the hope that they could obtain evidence and arrest suspects. What they were really looking for there was any proof of human experimentation. Back in the present, the police proceeded directly with searching the building. There were instructions that any confined victims discovered should be rescued. And when they asked in the meeting if they should be afraid of being attacked on sight, they were told that this might happen. The remodeled, brainwashed villains might attack due to confusion. A huge elephant and panda confronted the police in one room. However, they were told it wasn't the fault of those they would encounter if they attacked, so they should handle them gently. Meanwhile, Eraserhead caught an elephant by using his capturing weapon on its trunk. And since they were told it was okay to beat them up as long as they would survive, Fat Gum did exactly that. They became worried when they heard the footsteps of a huge villain familiar to them. It seemed like the one that attacked them during Christmas. Kaneko was concerned and asked if that meant it would explode. Eraserhead was confident that if the explosion was powered by a quirk, then he could erase it. This was Fat Gum's chance, so he jumped to subdue it, asking if anyone had ordered heavy. He charged at it and pummeled it with punches. When Fat Gum finally knocked it down, everyone was shocked to notice that it wasn't alone. There were many more similar exploding villains. Because of this, everyone couldn't help but be concerned. Eraserhead said he couldn't see all of them in his line of sight quickly enough. The mastermind behind this was lurking behind the villains. And before long, the top floor of the building exploded. The exploding villains escaped, carrying what Detective Tsukachi identified as the central figure of the villain factory. While in the air, he admitted he was surprised by the invasion. He had expected them to come, but not this quickly. He didn't even have time to help the researchers escape the explosion. Nevertheless, he said it was a good way to ensure no one would squeal information about them. The villain dropped him on top of a moving truck, and he remarked that their timing was terrible. It would have been enough to hurt Captain Celebrity for his next experiment, but now that their bomber warehouse was gone, they were forced into a liquidation sale. Therefore, everyone should be eliminated. He sat down and looked at the road sign, indicating it was only 1.5 kilometers to the Sky Egg. He was pleased because today was the big day at the Sky Egg. It would be a real tragedy, he said, if it ended up a disaster. That's where the escaped exploding villains were heading. Back at Captain Celebrity's farewell party, he instructed everyone to point their cameras at him because he had something to show them all. It turned out to be a family picture with his baby and wife, who clearly wasn't ready for that selfie. Captain Celebrity proudly showcased his baby, who had just been born that year. He claimed the baby had his eyes, and everything else came from the mother, meaning the outcome was okay. He was all smiles while showing it to the crowd. At the side, Makoto became concerned when she noticed that picture. Captain Celebrity then decided to make a surprise call to his wife. So he quieted everyone down to see if she would answer, so she could say hi to them all. However, her immediate response to the call was asking if he knew what time it was. He quickly apologized, saying he had forgotten about time zones. When he asked if she was already sleeping, she replied that she had just put their child to bed, so she was preparing for her first good night's sleep in a while. She asked what was happening. Everyone was quiet and waiting while listening to their conversation. Captain Celebrity admitted that he had introduced her, as well as their junior, to those present. Pamela was very shocked when she heard this and asked who he was referring to. She told him not to say he had shown her picture, because she looked terrible in it. Captain Celebrity couldn't answer that. She just sighed on the other line and said it was okay if he showed it to the people who looked after him there in Japan. She was curious if it was just 5 or 10 people. And when he said it was more than that, she asked exactly how many. Pamela remembered that there was indeed a big party for him, which probably explains why he got excited and showed their picture to everyone. She said it might be a big event in Tokyo to celebrate the end of his time there. So, she would forgive him if no more than 50 people had seen it. Captain Celebrity started sweating as he whispered 50,000. His wife barely heard it, so he repeated that the big event was in full swing and he had an audience of 50,000. His wife couldn't believe it and didn't respond anymore, then suddenly hung up the call. Captain Celebrity asked if she was still there. Because of this, Makoto directed that they should move on to the next act ahead of schedule. So, the other pro heroes appeared again and showed off their skills. Some performed exhibitions that looked like a circus show, while Best Jeanist demonstrated his quirk of controlling fiber. He used the female heroes there as models and manipulated their clothes. The audience was very impressed by what they witnessed. Air Blast used his quirk and shot blasts of air that snipe and headshot target. The MC, Present Mike, kept hyping up the crowd. The Wild Wild Pussycats also presented on stage, and the Captain Celebrity Agency cheerleaders cheered for them. The audience was surprised when there was suddenly water on stage, as Wash appeared and used his quirk. With him was Gang Orca and his sidekicks. Most of the audience was delighted, not expecting to get wet there. Meanwhile, Makoto told Koichi that her boss needed to return to the stage in a minute, so she sent him to find him. Because of this, Koichi ran to look for him, thinking he might have gone to the viewing platform below. He got distracted when he saw exclusive Sky Egg merchandise on display and said he would come back for it later. A few moments later, he caught up with Captain Celebrity and called out to him. He said he was needed upstairs. However, Captain Celebrity just peeked out because he was still talking to his wife, Pamela. On the call, he admitted that he was the worst. He wasn't trying to break his promise and confessed he just got carried away. It was true that there was nothing little about it, and he said she was always right, and he knew that. While waiting, Koichi noticed something outside that looked like a fire. He also saw creatures approaching, flying in their direction. He was shocked when he realized they were like the villain they had encountered during Christmas. They reached the Sky Egg, and the exploding villains began wreaking havoc there. There was an explosion, which worried Makoto when she heard it. The pro heroes inside felt it too and became concerned. The building where they were located shook, and the audience thought it might be due to an earthquake. Back at the viewing platform, the window where Koichi was suddenly shattered. Because of this, he fell, and Captain Celebrity noticed it. Koichi was clearly afraid for his life, but fortunately, he had a quirk that he used to cling to the wall of the Sky Egg. However, when he looked behind him, he noticed the height of where he was. Captain Celebrity checked on him and asked if he was still in one piece, to which he replied somehow. He pointed to another flying creature and said it was one of the bomb villains. Captain Celebrity responded no prob since he claimed he could beat them in speed and power. The one that Captain Celebrity chased self-destructed, but he shielded himself from the explosion. The pro hero said that suicide attack wouldn't even make a dent in him. He claimed he could eat those explosions all day, but the person in charge of them said they weren't finished yet. There were more exploding villains around, and one behind Captain Celebrity quickly flew toward the Sky Egg. Koichi noticed that it was extremely large. It headed straight for a part of the Sky Egg and exploded. The explosion it caused was so massive that Koichi couldn't believe it. It seemed the entire tower was in trouble as it was now swaying. Inside, people were panicking because they were getting dizzy from the building's movement. Nevertheless, using his strength, Captain Celebrity tried desperately to support the entire tower. This prompted Koichi to ask if he could handle it. He just laughed and said it was nothing, although he was tied up for now. The mastermind behind this was watching from the top of a building and said that when hostages are threatened, speed and power become useless. Now, it was trial and error. Captain Celebrity challenged the approaching exploding villains. He said he was the one they wanted. He was confident that one more explosion or two wouldn't be enough to crack him, but the villain had already counted on him taking hits. So, the next experiment was cooked up specifically for Captain Celebrity. Using its fists, the six-armed bomber attacked Captain Celebrity with explosive punches. It used a triple play that clearly impacted Captain Celebrity. This villain could fire off multiple hits, and also had a regeneration quirk baked in. That meant unlimited bomb punches. So, the villain was curious how many blasts he could endure before falling. The villain didn't stop, especially since Captain Celebrity couldn't fight back because he was still holding up the tower. He continued supporting the structure. Again, he laughed while still holding it and said, as he had mentioned, he could eat those wimpy attacks all day long. His visor was completely shattered and he was bleeding, but he said even 100 blasts couldn't make him budge. Koichi called out to him. However, when a part of the Sky Egg broke, items fell from it, and one of those caught by Koichi was a Sky Egg exclusive All Might hoodie. Inside the Sky Egg, people were wondering about the cause of the building's movement. They were curious if it was just an earthquake. Ingenium requested an update from the control room about what was happening in the Sky Egg. However, someone responded that they couldn't identify what was happening from inside either. Meanwhile, Makoto was worried while calling her boss. There was also chaos where the other heroes were located. They were concerned about the audience's condition, which prompted the dragon hero Ryukyu to ask if she should go out to check what was happening there. Outside, one of the exploding villains landed on the dome's roof and generated an extremely powerful electromagnetic pulse. Because of this, they lost signal inside. The heroes wondered what was happening. The place also blacked out, causing the little sisters to panic and run in fear. When the feathers checked their phones, they noticed there was suddenly no cell signal. From a distant building, the person responsible for the exploding villain stated that the Yempi blast had surely crashed all electronics. He explained that Captain Celebrity's battle couldn't be interrupted. Back inside the Sky Egg, the heroes gathered for a meeting and examined the floor plan of the venue. In a typical earthquake or blackout, they explained, the elevators would shut down, but the emergency stairs leading to the bottom of the dome would be unlocked. However, even though the power was gone, the electric locks remained engaged. In other words, Best Jeanist revealed that they were sealed inside. This appeared to be deliberately done by a third party. The heroes couldn't believe it, especially Makoto. Gang Orca considered that this was likely not an accident or act of nature. According to Ed Shot, this was an attack by a malevolent force. Death Arms asked if this meant it was terrorism. Best Jeanist looked at him and tried to calm him down, addressing him as Desudagoro. He said that heroes couldn't afford to become unwound since their duty was to provide peace of mind to the civilians under their care. They then asked Makoto if there was any news from Captain Celebrity, to which she replied that there wasn't any, clearly restless due to the situation. Someone suggested they should assume the worst, that he wasn't in a position to help them right now. They would have to respond to the crisis themselves, whoever was available among the heroes there. Best Jeanist instructed them to carefully assess the situation and ensure the civilians were safe and secure. He told them to contact outside and prepare for a possible attack from an enemy they had yet to identify. They would split up and use their quirks where they were most effective. He stated that they held 50,000 lives in their hands and couldn't allow even a single casualty. He added that they would need cool heads and efficient teamwork to create a tightly knit safety net. And so he asked if everyone agreed with this plan. Mirko responded that there was nothing she hated more than teamwork. The other heroes were shocked by her statement. Present Mike then took the stage and got everyone's attention. He announced that the nasty shaking and blackout were due to an earthquake. That's what they were telling them. Therefore, until they received the green light, everyone needed to remain seated. Pop Step was moving through the crowd with a basket, asking if anyone was feeling unwell. Other heroes were distributing blankets to those in need, while Midnight had helped a child fall asleep. Back in the control room, Makoto, Ingenium, and Best Jeanist were still strategizing. Makoto mentioned there was a small access hatch at the top of the dome that they could unlock manually. However, this wouldn't help them get down to the ground. But Best Jeanist said that would be sufficient. Those capable of flight could exit through there and make contact with the outside. He instructed them to coordinate with the police, fire department, and Sky Egg facilities management. Additionally, he told them to ensure an emergency posting was placed on the Hero Network. They became concerned when the building suddenly shook again from an unidentified cause. Gang Orca mentioned that Captain Celebrity's strength would have been helpful to them right now. Nevertheless, Ingenium admitted he was worried because Captain Celebrity himself might be in danger. Makoto couldn't hide the concern on her face for her boss. Outside, Due to the bomber's successive punches at Captain Celebrity, his visor was knocked off his face, something he hadn't expected. Nevertheless, he just smiled and apologized, saying he must have dozed off briefly. The villain's little love taps had put him to sleep, he claimed. The villain attacked him again, but he remarked that there were many like this one in the States. They would approach him to test what he could do. He added that he found it difficult to refuse, but usually they would tire after 5 or 10 good hits. Then they would say that was enough. Though bloodied, Captain Celebrity still hadn't let go of his grip on the tower. He observed that his opponent was clearly made of stronger stuff, but he knew that everyone's got a limit, especially since the villain was blowing his hands clean off with each punch. There's no unlimited regeneration, he noted. Now, he wasn't sure how much more the villain could take, so he advised him not to exhaust himself and to stop. He mentioned he still had work to return to, and he felt they were just wasting their time there. The villain's arms regenerated again, and Captain Celebrity continued talking to him even though he wasn't responding. He asked if the villain had said he was not on the clock. He laughed and thought that this was just a freebie for him. The villain charged again, but a projectile caused his fist to explode. Captain Celebrity was puzzled by this, and when he turned around, he recognized the person responsible for it. At that moment, Koichi's feet and hands became visible, wearing the Sky Egg All Might hoodie. He was upside down and introduced himself as the person who shoots something from his hands to protect the tower in the sky. He was the Crawler, Sky Egg version. Captain Celebrity questioned what his big idea was. Captain Celebrity asked him to leave because there won't be much left to scrape if he falls. Koichi knew this meant he might die. Nevertheless, he'd be dead meat anyway if the entire Sky Egg collapsed on him. Captain Celebrity felt insulted, thinking Koichi didn't believe he could handle the situation. He responded that the villain was beating the crap out of him, but he dismissed this as nonsense and said he was fine. However, Koichi advised him to drop the tough act, saying it was getting obnoxious. So, with his feet stuck to the wall, Koichi used his new move to hit the villain in different parts of its body. He explained that if his projectiles could blow up the villain's fists, then Captain Celebrity wouldn't have to endure those punches. He used what he called his ultimate rapid-fire combo, the Crawler Shooty Go Blam 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 Blam. He released successive repulsion force blasts that hit the villain and blew up its fists. Captain Celebrity called out to Koichi and told him to listen. He had realized something that Koichi needed to know. When Koichi asked what it was, Captain Celebrity replied that Koichi's little potshots might buy them time, but they weren't enough to bring down their friend there because it could easily regenerate. The regrowth of its hands was clearly visible. Koichi said the potshots were enough. If he continued using them, surely a hero is bound to show up and help. Captain Celebrity was surprised that Koichi planned to leave the heavy lifting to others. Koichi replied that he was just doing what he could, and others would pick up the slack. If Captain Celebrity thought about it, that had always been his style. Captain Celebrity commented wow and said that was so uncool. However, that might be the only option they had. So he told Koichi not to give up even though it was difficult, and Koichi was all fired up by this. Once again, the exploding villain moved to attack. But every time it tried to swing its bomb punches at Captain Celebrity, Koichi would protect him and use his Shooty Go Blam to stop the villain. Koichi also needed to slide around to always be in the right spot to protect him. As Koichi prepared to hit the villain with another Shoot Go Blam, he suddenly fell when the suction effect of his quirk turned off. Fortunately, Captain Celebrity caught one of his legs, causing Koichi to thank him. He warned him that if he became careless, no one would be left to protect him, and he considered what could happen. If Captain Celebrity fell, no one would be holding up the Sky Egg. This meant the dome and the 50,000 people inside would fall. All of that would be because he had been careless. Koichi, who had managed to get back up, acknowledged this. He told Captain Celebrity there was no need to pressure him further. Captain Celebrity smiled and encouraged him again. Koichi then noticed that despite his condition, Captain Celebrity still maintained his smile. In a flashback to when Captain Celebrity was younger, he was already famous. In high school, someone even created a fan club for him. Because of his flight quirk, he could easily fly above them, and people would always wave and smile at him, whether children, adults, and especially women. However, there was one particular person who didn't care about him. Instead of smiling, she frowned whenever she saw him and avoided eye contact. which puzzled Captain Celebrity. So he approached her and asked what was wrong. He said he had never ignored someone who looked grumpy, so he decided to approach her. Pamela responded that was just how she was. Fair enough, he replied, but he claimed to know a magic trick that could turn her frown upside down. He quickly lifted her into the air, which startled her. People always told Captain Celebrity that flying with him was better than riding a roller coaster. He asked if she was scared and told her to hold on to him, but she suddenly punched him in the face. While in the air, Pamela struggled in extreme irritation and he asked her to stop. He said he understood and would bring her down. Chris, or Captain Celebrity, apologized and asked if she didn't like it. She replied that she didn't like being forced onto his roller coaster ride. Pamela added that she wasn't a fan of his goofy grin either. He scratched his head, saying it was the first time someone had said something like that to him. Pamela wasn't surprised by this. She remarked that people probably don't get angry at balloons like him. Captain Celebrity was confused by being called a balloon. Pamela explained that he was like a balloon floating around but empty inside. Captain Celebrity couldn't accept that she was referring to him because it was too harsh, but she just walked away from him. Though her words were painful, the next day Captain Celebrity approached Pamela again, carrying a balloon. He introduced himself as just a balloon and apologized for what happened. He told her he was just trying to make her smile. When he asked if she was still angry, Pamela, who was busy reading, answered that she wasn't. Captain Celebrity suddenly sat down beside her and said he was sure she found his guts annoying, especially since she was frowning when he first saw her. He was about to touch her, but Pamela tapped his hand away. She clarified that she had only thought it might be nice to fly in the sky like that. Captain Celebrity was surprised by her reason and invited her again, but Pamela refused his roller coaster ride. She said only stupid kids would enjoy that. He then offered a balloon ride, which made Pamela curious. The two floated together just a few inches from the ground. Because they were so low, Pamela thought they probably looked foolish, as several people were already looking at them. Because of this, Captain Celebrity said the balloon tour would take to the air. Chris admitted that he wanted everyone to like him, which was why he gave extra favors, especially to girls in particular. But that day, he said, he had met a shrew who needed to be tamed. That might have been how he felt then. However, while they were in the air, when he noticed her smile, he fell in love with her. After that, he began courting her. At every opportunity, he tried to get her attention, hoping she would glance his way. And as time passed, his desire to capture Pamela's smile never faded. During a date, Pamela said that Chris was, without a doubt, the biggest idiot she knew. But since most people in this stinking world were irredeemable garbage, he was perhaps a teeny tiny bit better than others in a few small ways. It turned out Captain Celebrity was actually proposing to her at this point and asked if her answer was yes. Pamela couldn't answer immediately and just blushed. Captain Celebrity suddenly carried her and lifted her into the sky. She became annoyed and told him to stop. He smiled and asked if she was scared. If so, he told her to just hold on to him. With no other choice, she simply called Chris a dummy. Fast forward, the two got married. Captain Celebrity had never been so happy. Because of this, he knew they would be together forever and he would witness Pamela's smiles every day he was alive. He was absolutely certain of that. However, he kept making her angry, and before long, even his work wasn't going well anymore. The people he had considered good pals were just using him. Because of this, he became entangled in issues. Some of the baddies he had taken down fought back and sued him as if he were the one in the wrong. Due to everything that happened, he wondered where he had gone wrong. He asked his wife what he should do. He admitted that thinking about what was right and wrong, whether at home or out in the world, was something he really struggled with, no matter how much he thought about it. Back in the present, Koichi asked if Captain Celebrity was enjoying himself there. He said he wasn't sure why they should be smiling. Captain Celebrity apologized and said he was just thinking about something. He explained that he was facing the exploding villain and holding the lives of 50,000 civilians in his hands. He had never encountered a crisis so cut and dried. This meant that even an idiot like him couldn't afford to make a mistake there. Koichi pleaded with him to stop explaining how terrifying their situation was. He suddenly shouted when it looked like the villain was about to unleash a big old combo fist this time. The villain concentrated on the explosive power of his fist, so Koichi countered it. Although he managed to hit it, the blowback was extremely powerful. He hadn't expected the villain to have another big blast ready. Caught off guard, he couldn't prepare another shot in time. Koichi failed to destroy it, which made him worried for Captain Celebrity. The villain's fist went straight to his chest. However, it didn't explode. Koichi wondered what had happened. Just then, a helicopter was flying toward them. Eraserhead was holding onto it, and he stared at the exploding villain to erase its explosive quirk. There was someone in a car below who asked about the situation up there. Eraserhead replied that he had stopped the bomber for now, but it could still explode. He said they would be in trouble if it flew around the tower and out of his line of sight. That's exactly what the villain tried to do. However, it was caught by numerous threads while flying. The person who created these threads said the villain wouldn't escape. Koichi recognized him. Best Jeanist asked if that was a tight fit. Koichi wondered what he was standing on, though he knew he was one of the guest heroes, Best Jeanist. The airborne escape team reported that they had already alerted the authorities and personnel. Now, Ryukyu and Airjet were preparing to face the villains. Best Jeanist said this meant their thread of hope hadn't been cut yet. Koichi commented that Best Jeanist was a punny guy. After that, Ryukyu quickly took down one of the lab villains. Gang Orca explained to Makoto that Ryukyu, Mirko, and Snipe were hog-tying the airborne villain at the top of the dome, and Snipe added that they believed this villain was the one jamming their communications. Gang Orca commented that hopefully they could now contact those outside, but Makoto said that their cell phones and landlines in the facility were still not working. Fortunately, Ingenium announced that Team Edaten's comm links had arrived. He distributed them to his companions, and afterward, he tried to contact his team members in the control room, and they were able to receive his transmission and hear him clearly. The female assistant he was speaking with told him to provide them with a full report of their current situation. Ingenium informed her that the other heroes still had no communications network, so the members of Team Edaten would mobilize and assist them on all fronts. His control room would act as a hub to coordinate this operation. After saying that, he addressed his team as if narrating the start of a race. He shouted, "Team Edaten full throttle," and his team sprang into action. Next, he told Gang Orca and Makoto to coordinate with the room where they were, and his companions would handle the communications and commands. Gang Orca asked him what he would do, to which he replied that he would help the heroes outside the dome. He ran quickly outside, and when he saw Edshot, he asked about their situation. So Edshot began explaining while fighting that their opponents were not the type to be trifled with, but they would prevail. After attacking a villain, he immediately shouted at Best Jeanist to follow up. So Best Jeanist quickly wrapped the villain with strands from his jacket. Next, Best Jeanist, now in his cut-off style, asked Ingenium if his request had arrived. Soon enough, the carbon fiber cables he had requested, which were made for suspension bridges, arrived on the scene. One of the delivery guys asked Best Jeanist if he could really manage them because they were referring to an extremely heavy load, to which he responded not to worry. He said that as long as it was fiber, even many tons of cable were his to command with his Fiber Master quirk. He began to move the carbon fiber cables and placed them at each end of the collapsing sky egg, and before long, he had created support to stabilize it again. Koichi smiled when he noticed this, and pointed out to Captain Celebrity that this was what he was talking about. They had managed to hold out until the heroes arrived. Though severely beaten up, Captain Celebrity also smiled and said that if they were truly in the clear, he had a request for him while addressing him by his name as a sign of respect. Koichi wondered why he sounded so serious. Captain Celebrity asked him to deliver a message to his wife and child. He wanted Koichi to tell them that their husband and father was a great hero. Koichi agreed and said that it seemed simple enough, and soon Edshot arrived and asked if they were okay, to which he replied yes with excitement. He turned to look at Captain Celebrity afterward and asked why he couldn't just tell them himself when he got home. But when he looked back, he no longer saw Captain Celebrity by his side. It appeared that his body had given out and he had begun to free fall. While falling, Captain Celebrity reflected that pushing himself to his limits and using every drop of his strength had never been his style, but it didn't feel bad. He spoke to his wife in his thoughts and asked if this was finally something that would earn him praise from her. He added wondering how he was doing and if he was dashing enough. He also asked if, in the end, he deserved to be her partner. Unexpectedly, Koichi followed him in an attempt to save him, which surprised Captain Celebrity. Captain Celebrity shouted, asking what Koichi thought he was doing, to which Koichi responded with confusion and then suddenly screamed in fear. In a panic, Koichi told him to stop falling and fly, and while doing so, to save him too. Captain Celebrity explained that his powers were depleted and he could no longer float, pointing out that Koichi really knew how to complicate things, to which Koichi replied that he had merely slipped. Suddenly, Captain Celebrity grabbed Koichi's arm and pulled him closer. He embraced him and began to envelop him with what remained of his quirk while praying that God or the heroes would save him. He told them to forget about him as long as they saved this incredibly brave young man. Soon after, Aizawa and the other heroes outside the dome noticed them. Edshot pointed out that they were the unsung shadow heroes of this operation, and Best Jeanist added that they wouldn't allow those two to perish. On the other hand, the speedster villain suddenly commented if that was really what they thought because he had a different plan. He admitted that their desperate deployment of the entire group against him bought them some time, but the sheer firepower advantage was always his, even with just this little taste, for experimental purposes. Afterward, he brushed that off and said it would end only when he said so, and no sooner. Back on the hero's side, the bomber villain exploded himself to escape from the bindings, which alarmed Aizawa. Because smoke obscured the villain, Aizawa lost sight of him. The speedster villain added to his previous statement that, and yet those present, those worms, thought they were hot stuff. While pressing his smartphone, he furiously said that they really ground his gears, so it would be better if they just died. After pressing his cell, the bomber villain started to bubble up while holding onto the tower's body. He also controlled the bomber villain to grow a few more bodies for one last big explosion. Before long, the bomber villain's body completely exploded, and with the force of the blast, it easily severed the tower body that was already supported by the carbon fiber cables installed by Best Jeanist without any difficulty. Afterward, let's go back 2 minutes prior. While Aizawa and Detective Tsukauchi were in the helicopter, Aizawa told him that they could no longer deny that they needed All Might. So he also asked if there was a way for him to bring All Might there. He also pointed out that Best Jeanist's quirk was managing to keep the tower upward, but it was reportedly hanging by a thread. If their enemy had another trick up their sleeve, he said that even if all of them worked together, they might still be powerless to stop it. Tsukauchi tried to reason that he couldn't summon the #1 hero as a mere precaution, which caused Aizawa to shout that he understood it went against regular police procedure, but they were facing an unprecedented crisis here. He emphasized that the rulebook had already been thrown out the window. Next, he asked if Tsukauchi had a hotline or something to contact All Might during emergencies, which made Tsukauchi remember their conversation. When Tsukauchi looked at his phone, he saw that he had cell signal despite being so high in the air. While this was happening, we shift to Might Tower. Here, All Might was in a meeting where the next topic of discussion, according to the standing woman, would be his action plan for the coming quarter. His phone started ringing, causing him to look at it, and soon he was scolded by the speaker who asked him to have manners during meetings, to which he apologized. He quickly left and made the excuse that he needed a bathroom break, which further angered the woman. When he answered the call, he immediately asked if something had happened to Tsukauchi, because he usually only texted. Tsukauchi quickly informed him that the Tokyo Sky Egg was in danger, and the call was suddenly cut off due to a massive explosion, which alarmed All Might. He asked Tsukauchi to repeat what he said, but due to Tsukauchi's extreme shock at the scene, he couldn't speak right away. We're back to the present where the Sky Egg is collapsing, causing great concern among the heroes. Best Jeanist also tried to add more carbon fiber cables to prevent its fall. Inside the Sky Egg, people were screaming in fear, while the heroes were trying to protect them in any way they could. The civilians were in complete panic, especially the children who were crying in fear while screaming for help. Outside the Sky Egg on top of a building, we returned to the speedster villain. He was asking if they now understood what he wanted to convey. He claimed that this catastrophe was already a done deal, and they just didn't realize it. There was no turning back time, he said, and they could no longer fight against fate. Only a god, he claimed, could save them now. Back to the helicopter where Tsukauchi was, he shouted his sister's name in extreme worry. On the phone, a concerned All Might asked if what he heard was an explosion, and if he was correct that Tsukauchi mentioned the Sky Egg. While this was happening, We suddenly go to a flashback where he was still a student and Makoto was just a little child. Here, Makoto greeted him and asked if he came straight home, to which he agreed. While Makoto was holding him, she commented that he was telling the truth. Next, she informed him that their mommy had taken her to the hospital and asked if he had been worried about her. He answered no, which Makoto detected as a lie. While in the dining area with Makoto playing in the living area, Naomasa asked their mommy what the test revealed, to which she replied that Makoto had a quirk that could read minds or something, which made him react that he should have known. She said they initially thought Makoto was just perceptive. After a few moments, Makoto sat beside him and held him. She told him that she loved him, but asked if he loved her too. He scolded her, saying that she shouldn't go around asking people those things and not like that. Their mom intervened and said that he should just humor her because it was kind of cute, to which he replied that it wouldn't be cute if it became a habit. He pointed out that nothing good could come of probing people's feelings that way, which made his mother comment that he was such a serious one. Afterward, Makoto held his cheeks and seriously told him to give her an answer to her question. Did he love her? Naomasa shyly answered that what he hated was little girls who asked too many questions. We return to the present where he was telling All Might that as an officer of the law, he knew he shouldn't be asking this, but just this once. He remembered Makoto's reaction after he said he didn't like that kind of girl. She was delighted to discover he was lying. Due to his extreme concern, he was pushed to ask All Might to save his sister. All Might understood, but said he couldn't say that he was on his way there. At Might Tower, a part of the building suddenly exploded due to All Might's rapid takeoff. And he added to his statement that if Naomasa was asking why, it was because in times like these, there was only one thing he wanted to say. He added that Naomasa already knew it, and we know it too, the phrase, "I am here." In an instant, All Might arrived at the Sky Egg with incredible speed and punched its body. Using his speed, he cleared the area below it. He cleared away objects, animals that might be affected, and even managed to take pictures with civilians in the area. Next, he caught the Sky Egg and gently placed it on the ground. Everyone inside the dome felt this, and even the heroes couldn't believe they were alive. Makoto cried from the relief she felt, as did the people inside. The tension among the heroes outside dissipated, and Best Jeanist commented that the #1 hero had outdone himself again. People shouted in surprise at All Might's arrival, amazed that he had cleared the collapsing tower in a flash and properly set the dome on the ground. Tsukauchi was moved to tears with joy, while Aizawa stared at him. In the air, Captain Celebrity and Koichi continued to fall. When Captain Celebrity glimpsed the ground, he saw All Might and remarked that that was the #1 hero of Japan. He was surprised when Koichi suddenly shouted All Might's name to get his attention. In an instant, All Might flew up to catch them and commented that he was happy to meet Captain Celebrity and praised him as well. When they landed, All Might shook Captain Celebrity's hand and asked Koichi who he was, to which Koichi excitedly replied that he was just a fan. He also asked All Might if he could get an autograph, which All Might agreed to. Captain Celebrity closed his eyes after that. When he sat down, he chuckled at himself because he thought he was the real hero, but realized he wasn't when he saw All Might, while Koichi was overjoyed with his autographed hoodie. Despite the happiness of many people, one individual couldn't believe it. On top of the building, the speedster villain gradually became irritated, unable to accept the failure of his plan. In the next scene, reporters arrived to show the public the appearance and events of the Sky Egg bombing. Behind her, they could see the debris, rubble, and the body of one of the bomber villains that assaulted the Sky Egg. She explained that just like the incident at the end of last year that Captain Celebrity handled, the massive villains that arrived there possessed self-detonation quirks, and the attack was perpetrated by an entire swarm of them. She added that the Dome was hosting a large-scale event featuring heroes from both Japan and the United States, and it began to fall with approximately 50,000 attendees still inside. The individual who guided everyone to safety was none other than their #1 hero, All Might. Reporters swarmed All Might in hopes of getting a comment, but All Might told them was that he didn't have much to say except thank God that everyone there survived. That said, he added, they still had many frightened and injured people. Even now, he said that pro-heroes, law enforcement, and relief workers were on the job to safely bring people home and figure out what happened here. Therefore, He also said that the public should show their support for everyone helping the true heroes. After saying that, he excused himself, which surprised the reporters. They tried to chase after him, but due to his speed, they couldn't catch up to him. While this was happening, Sakauchi was running around as if looking for someone. Someone called his name, and when he turned around, it turned out to be All Might in his Mr. Yagi form hiding behind some boxes. He asked Sakauchi if he could borrow some clothes because he wanted to stay in the area in case there was another attack, but he said he only brought his hero costume. Coincidentally, Pop Step told people if anyone was feeling cold because they had CC hoodies available. Mr. Yagi quickly approached their table to get one, where Mio also offered him tea and sweets to help him calm down. After that, Mio dejectedly said that they would probably just give away the merchandise they were supposed to sell, to which Makoto added that they would surely be in the red because of that. She thought about it for a moment, and before long, she regained her game face and confidently said that wasn't the case. She said this wasn't the time to think about money. Mio and the others commented that she seemed to have gotten her second wind. She agreed and explained that her boss was out of commission, so it was up to them to help the people there. She asked if they were ready to pitch in, to which they all happily agreed. Sakauchi smiled when he saw that, and Mr. Yagi asked if that was his sister. He said he was glad she was safe. This reminded Sakauchi to apologize for being bent out of shape, which Mr. Yagi brushed off and said that, in fact, his impassioned plea was what brought him there at the right time. Sakauchi wondered if it really worked that way, so Mr. Yagi said yes, and that he was serious about it because there was a large psychological component to All Might's strength. He added that now he knew that Sakauchi had explained how a public figure like him shouldn't make things personal, but when he received a rescue request, and when his own ears heard it, it felt like a direct order to All Might. Mr. Yagi also pointed out that he accepted this power to give people hope that their cries would surely reach All Might, or something like that. Sakauchi was puzzled by what he said about accepting his power, at which point Mr. Yagi was startled because he didn't realize he was oversharing. He was saved by the bell when Aizawa, Kaneko, and Fat Gum approached Sakauchi to talk. While Mr. Yagi was introducing himself to them, he said in his mind that he needed to explain to Sakauchi one of these days about the secret behind All Might. On top of a building, the speedster villain was shown again, and he irritably asked what all the pats on the back and feel-good mood in the place were for, because for him, it was a little too soon to celebrate. He took out his smartphone and said that the heroes thought they had defeated him, but that was only because they didn't know he was holding back. He pressed buttons on his smartphone again, while adding that they might get the point once they were all dead. The chunks of the bomber villain's body began to crawl and stick together. He regenerated those parts, combined them, and enlarged them again. The bomber villain's body grew larger and larger, causing the destruction of debris and rubble surrounding it. Its size became gigantic and took on an appearance that looked like an abomination. People in the area were alarmed because now this bomber villain was monster-sized. The speedster villain said that it wasn't just big, because a racer head could easily make a large explosion a dud, or All Might could just throw it into the sky before it exploded. Koichi noticed its stomach and asked why this villain's stomach was inflating, to which the speedster villain added that because of these factors, it was a special recipe he called the cluster bomber. The bomber villain's stomach tore open and countless bat-like versions of the bomber villain began to emerge. The speedster villain explained that because of the 200 mini-bombers emerging simultaneously, All Might wouldn't be able to handle all those small creatures, and even if every pro hero here fought, he bet they couldn't eliminate even half of them. While the extreme concern of civilians and heroes at this event was clearly visible, he added that they were still looking at approximately 100 mini-bombers here, so the civilians, police, firefighters, rescue workers, and even locals in this area who had been saved by the heroes would all die. Aizawa shouted about the number of bombers, while Kaneko said there were too many, so they were screwed. Using his speed, Mr. Yagi immediately transformed into All Might and charged at the numerous mini-bombers. Upon getting close, he gave them a Nebraska smash, which created a tornado-like shockwave toward them. The speedster villain was irritated that All Might managed to defeat so many using just one punch. He saw that the punch created a tornado that sucked in and triggered the blast of each mini-bomber. He bowed his head after that and seemed to feel a strong heartbeat. Suddenly, he grinned and laughed loudly while saying this was too much. Who had ever heard of such a thing? He asked. It was hard to believe that a man like that existed. The individual he was speaking with on the phone commented that he should believe it while calling him number 6. He might doubt his eyes, but what he was seeing was the cold, hard truth. That man, referring to All Might, did exist. He was a true superhuman in a different league compared to other heroes. A deus ex machina who seemed to violate the laws of physics and fate itself at every turn. He added that such is All Might, the pinnacle of what they hoped to achieve. Number 6 questioned what he said about that being what they wanted to achieve, and said he couldn't say he wanted to be All Might, to which the individual replied of course not, and that he should continue to act as he saw fit, for which he thanked him. He also said it was too bad that he had already used all the bombers today. Because of that, he decided to call it a day, and since the factory had exploded, he said he might need to put Tokyo in his rearview mirror and lay low for a while. As he was saying this, it turned out that Knuckle Duster was aiming a sniper at him from behind, and commented that it really seemed like that's what he wanted, but he wouldn't allow it. Next, he explained that the goal of the factory was to power up quirks by remodeling people and giving them drugs. He figured there was a decent chance that number 6 would use this Sky Egg event as a testing ground, since it would have many top heroes gathered in one place. So he checked which rooftops would provide a wide view of the Sky Egg in case number 6 decided to observe his experiment, and after that, all he needed was an ideal spot where he could sit and wait until he could snipe number 6. When he aimed his sniper rifle at the speedster villain, he saw that he was at a distance of 250 meters, and the wind had a speed of 8 meters per second coming from the southwest. He targeted his head and slowly pulled his trigger. However, something suddenly appeared in his scope which startled him, so when he fired his gun, only number 6's left shoulder was hit. Number 6 was shocked by his injury, and because of that, he dropped his binoculars and fell to his knees. In Knuckle Duster's mind, he said that something had flown past his line of fire, and it looked like a bird. He said he didn't hit the villain's head, but he was sure it would slow him down because of the injury. However, when number 6 turned to look at him, he grinned, and in an instant, disappeared from his crosshair, which shocked him. Number 6 quickly jumped from building to reach him. When he jumped high, he hit the flying bird, and for some reason when his body made contact with it, it immediately exploded. After that, he landed behind Knuckle Duster, and when Knuckle Duster turned around, number 6 greeted him with a grin. He commented that 6 was a fast individual, and it seemed that he didn't just have an acceleration quirk because his body appeared to have been tinkered with as well. Number 6 replied that it did seem that way and explained that lately he had been doing nothing but muscle training, some pain endurance, and various other things. He said he was a work in progress, and added that the acceleration quirk he had was called Overclock, and it was a quirk that previously belonged to the high-speed hero, a clock. Afterwards, he said that he really wanted to meet him and called him Master, to which Knuckle Duster replied, "Is that so?" And that he had been watching him for quite some time. He asked who this 6 was. He was sure that he was the scarred man controlling the remodeled villains, but beyond that, he didn't know anything about him. He had no information about his identity, history, or even his name. Nothing else except that somehow he had acquired Overclock after it was stolen from him. So he had many questions, but let's start with his name. Number 6 seemed intrigued when he asked about his name, and said he was honored because he was so interested. Except, he said, he was just a nobody, a weird little thing and unformed. They called him number 6, but it was just a number, not a real name. But if he wanted to know who he aspired to be, the answer was a clock, and there was no other name for him. Knuckle Duster questioned what he said and commented that most punks would say they wanted to be All Might, but why wasn't he like that? Number 6 explained that yes, All Might was an amazing individual. Had he seen how he saved 50,000 people in the Sky Egg single-handedly, and pointed out that no one else in the world could pull off such a stunt. But in a way, he was extremely limited. He said that All Might arrives to beat up villains or save the day when disaster strikes. But all of that's just playing clean up after trouble's already arrived. He said it was no different than a plumber coming to fix your pipes. One call, and he's on his way. Knuckle Duster reasoned that well, yeah, and that's what makes him the number 1 hero. He pointed out that humanity is extremely lucky that All Might doesn't go around acting out of self-interest, because if the day comes when he changes his stance and starts using that might for himself, the world would be doomed. Number 6 agreed with that, but explained that what he was referring to was that All Might has too much power. He said All Might's either going to save the world or destroy it. There's no third option if he can't use that power however he wants. And in his opinion, he said that's just pointless. If Knuckle Duster wanted to know why, it was all about living free. Knuckle Duster asked if he wasn't interested in helping people, to which Number 6 replied that he didn't hate the thought, but no, because that just wasn't his style. That was the reason why he wanted to be a clock. Who cares about having the power to destroy buildings? He asked. The quirk he had allowed him to make the first move no matter who he was facing, so he could defeat anyone in any way he wanted. That was a clock, he said, and that's what a true hero is. Knuckle Duster said that wasn't a hero, not even close, which made Number 6 remark on how humble he was. He said he's Knuckle Duster's biggest fan. He knew everything about him and would do anything to become him. On the day he watched Knuckle Duster's career crumble, he got goosebumps. It turns out the reason he had a scar on his face was that when he saw Knuckle Duster get a facial wound from his fight, he wounded himself thinking he would be next. So, he had a request for Knuckle Duster. He wanted Knuckle Duster to acknowledge him as his successor, then he could officially be a clock the second or 2 o'clock. Knuckle Duster apologized to him and said he already had a disciple, which silenced Number 6 momentarily. He then remembered that was Koichi, but he insisted that it was clear that he respected Knuckle Duster more than Koichi. Besides, he added, wasn't Koichi more of an All Might fan? To which Knuckle Duster replied yes, exactly. He pointed out that as he had said, a clock wasn't a hero, and expressed his dismay at his clock quirk being given to a random madman who impersonated him. He said Number 6 was nothing but the worst kind of villain, a scourge on society that needs to be exterminated. Number 6 replied that so he was the villain then, and accepted it. He asked what the plan was, and if Knuckle Duster was going to shoot him with the rifle, and if so, that plan had already failed, or perhaps he thought he couldn't miss at this range. He suddenly moved quickly and teasingly said for Knuckle Duster to try to hit him. Knuckle Duster pulled the trigger, but it was too late when Number 6 pushed it upward and said he had missed again. He pointed out that he wasn't lying, that he really respected Knuckle Duster as the former clock, but now without his quirk, he was just a schmuck, and once he accelerated, Knuckle Duster couldn't stop him. Number 6 said goodbye to him, and suddenly the muscles in his right arm enlarged. Once Knuckle Duster was dead and gone, he said he would become the true clock. Suddenly, something caught Number 6's attention, and when he turned, he saw a speaker playing Knuckle Duster's recorded voice at an extra high playback speed. Number 6 listened carefully to the recording and heard Knuckle Duster explaining that while he might now have the quirk of the high-speed hero clock, he hadn't yet completely grasped its true nature. What Overclock really did was stimulate the brain. By accelerating his perception and thoughts relative to everything else, it seemed as if the physical world slowed down. But the degree to which he sped up wasn't uniform. It depended on what was going through his head. When he activated it to throw some punches, he was probably going 3 to 10 times faster. But in a fight or flight emergency, he'll speed up a few dozen times over. When he really put his mind to it, it can almost feel like the world around him freezes in place. However, he said that honing that focus isn't necessarily a good thing because there's a time limit to the acceleration. If he take on too intense a task, he'll deprive his brain of oxygen. Furthermore, he added that the faster he go, the bigger the brain drain, meaning that when he's really on edge and focused, he'll run out the clock even faster than normal. For instance, when he's got a rifle pointed right at him, or when he's trying his hardest to listen to a recording played back at 300 times normal speed. Number 6 was shocked when he realized what Knuckle Duster was planning, and he barely dodged the rifle shot by a hair's breadth. Knuckle Duster's recording continued to play while he tried to hit Number 6. He shot at him again while Number 6 was still disoriented by the recording, and after Number 6 dodged him, he grinned and pointed out what he said about brain drain. Suddenly, Knuckle Duster pulled out a remote from his coat while saying sorry, but this villain wasn't going to get a breather. When he pressed the controller, it caused an explosion where they were. Number 6 couldn't believe he had done that. Because of it, he had nothing to step on and couldn't maneuver in midair. Knuckle Duster pointed out while hanging from his grappling hook that not just the roof was destroyed by the blast, but 3 floors as well, which put Number 6 in a free fall that made his acceleration worthless. Number 6 was shocked when he learned this, and when he noticed that Knuckle Duster was holding a shotgun now. When he tried to protect himself with his hands, Knuckle Duster told him that was right and to protect his noggin, because it was an important body part. However, he pointed out that didn't he need his legs to land, then suddenly shot him in the right leg with the shotgun. After that, a large piece of debris fell on his back, which further threw him off balance. Upon landing, Knuckle Duster commented that number 6 had clearly been modified to resist pain. So, if inflicting pain wasn't enough, he said it would be better to blow up each of his limbs. Knuckle Duster cocked his shotgun and shot number 6's arms and legs, but after this brutal act, number 6 still managed to grin and comment that something's fishy here. He pointed out that at first Knuckle Duster was trying to make a headshot, but now he was trying to capture him alive. He asked why Knuckle Duster had changed his plan, to which Knuckle Duster replied that he was shifting his priorities. He said that finishing him with one shot was his best bet at long range, but live capture was the way to go once a bird flew right into his cage. He added that number 6 should know that the next blast would bring down the building they were in, so there was no escape even if he started to speed up. The bird cage would become his tomb, calling it check and mate. At this, number 6 asked if he was correct that Knuckle Duster wanted him to surrender and admit defeat because he preferred not to kill him. He then pointed out that while Knuckle Duster was busy being naive, he had a chance to catch his breath. However, Knuckle Duster ignored what he said and just kicked him in the face. He agreed that taking down a dangerous villain was high on his priority list, but if he could get intel about the ringleader, that would be better. He also said that depriving his brain of oxygen wasn't the only way to seal off the overclock while he continued to destroy his face. A good concussion worked too, he said. As long as he beat him up thoroughly, he wouldn't be able to accelerate, and once he had made hamburger out of his face, he would tie him up and sit him down for an interview. Knuckle Duster noticed something about number 6 that made him pause his beating. He noticed that the wounds from the shotgun were no longer bleeding, so he asked if he also had healing powers. What a headache of a villain, he said, but once he was hog-tied, it wouldn't matter. However, he noticed something else that caught his attention. A mini-bomber villain began to emerge from number 6's arm, and he grinned while saying that he had been so close. He should have taken the headshot when he had the chance because he had allowed some bomber cells to ride on him as parasites, turning his own hand into a bomb. The mini-bomber's body gradually enveloped number 6's entire arm, and before long, it exploded loudly, forcing Knuckle Duster to cover his face. Number 6's entire left arm was severed after that, and a tremendous amount of blood flowed from it. After standing up, he began to laugh and commented that his master was truly amazing. He was really the coolest of them all. He said he was better than the so-called pros and even the number 1 hero, All Might. He claimed he was the greatest of all time by a long shot. While we were shown that Knuckle Duster was knocked down by the explosion, number 6 added that nevertheless, he was here to become even better than him. To become an o'clock that surpasses the original o'clock because, after all, he said only one person deserved to be like that. Knuckle Duster grinned and commented on how fun this fantasy was, but he said number 6 could barely stand after being hit by his own blast. He added that all he needed to do now was beat him up thoroughly until he felt like he didn't want to stand up anymore. He slowly got up while saying that this was where number 6 would meet his end, having made exactly nothing of himself, to which number 6 reasoned that, but he got careless. He said he was convinced that he was just a copycat. Granted that he knew everything there was to know about his former quirk, overclock, and surely even more, but he said he didn't know even a little bit about number 6 himself. Like how he could use overclock to do what he was about to do. He began using overclock on the mini-bomber cell, and because of that, he quickly grew a new arm using it. Knuckle Duster noticed that it was accelerated cell growth. After that, number 6 also put mini-bomber cells on his right hand, turning it into a bomb with maximum blasting power. It seemed this villain now had a gauntlet capable of releasing explosions with each punch. He asked Knuckle Duster what he had called this place again. A bird cage or a tomb. He brushed that off and said all he needed to do to escape was blow up the walls in this place, along with Knuckle Duster. When the villain was still speaking, Knuckle Duster suddenly charged and tried to deliver a right straight, but unfortunately, number 6 managed to dodge him, albeit surprised. As a follow-up, he planted his foot on the ground and prepared his left fist as a follow-up while saying he would put him to sleep before he could explode. Number 6 dodged him again, and was pleased with what he said was Knuckle Duster's unwavering advance and resolve. Knuckle Duster crouched and clenched his entire body, then charged from below, while number 6 prepared to throw a punch while commenting that he was really the coolest of all. Their fists landed simultaneously, and the intensity of this battle was visible on their faces. When their fists were about to connect, we suddenly shifted to where Koichi was. He seemed to have heard something from far away, so he turned toward it. He asked his companions if they had also heard the sound like a boom, to which Fat Gum worriedly asked if he really thought those were explosions again. Aizawa said they might be escaped unexploded mini-bombers, while Tsukauchi immediately told his police colleagues to check it out. Suddenly, a worried Kaneko interrupted and reported to Fat Gum that there was a big problem. She said she couldn't see the skinny dude from earlier. She got Fat Gum's attention when he remembered him, and he anxiously asked where he had gone, to which she said he might have been knocked away by All Might's Mega Punch because the man looked as light as a feather. Fat Gum immediately decided they should start looking for him, while Koichi asked what he looked like again. So Kaneko said he was tall and thin like skin and bones. Behind the boxes, Mr. Yagi was hiding again and whispered a call to Tsukauchi to ask for something to wear again. After that, we returned to the battle between Knuckle Duster and number 6, and here we were shown that the building where their confrontation took place had collapsed. A week after the Tokyo Sky Egg bombing, we suddenly went to a hospital where Captain Celebrity was resting and recovering, and here many people were cheering for him from outside. Because of his heroic actions that day, they came to thank him. When Pop Step peeked at this, she was amazed by how many people there were. Makoto added that the phone at their agency had been ringing nonstop due to calls from the press who desperately wanted to get comments for their sound bites. You said that Best Jeanist and the others who fought at the Sky Egg had appeared and said, after All Might, CC was VIP number 2, and he was the unsung hero here. To which Makoto commented that it was good press. Captain Celebrity apologized to Koichi because it seemed like he had somehow stolen a portion of his limelight, which Koichi brushed off and said it was okay. He said he thought he had nearly died several times that day, but he had gotten an autograph on his hoodie from All Might himself, so he was sure he still came out ahead in the end. Jubei commented on how worthless his life was, while Mio pointed out that he was still the same old idiot, and Pop Step scolded him for always rushing into danger. Koichi explained that he was a nobody who tried to fight villains. That quote-unquote achievement could put him in jail if they found out. Makoto said that actually, the police had spoken to her about that particular point, which shocked and worried Koichi and Pop Step because they thought they had been found out by the police. We went back to a point in time when Naomasa spoke to Makoto about this issue. Naomasa opened up to Makoto that Eraserhead had given him information about the Narahata Vigilante with the code named the Crawler, which left her speechless. He explained that this past week, the Crawler had helped Captain Celebrity save many lives, so it was only right that he should receive public recognition, and even a commendation if possible. However, he said that his penchant for vigilantism could put him in danger. He agreed that plenty of what the Crawler does falls into a gray area, but if word really got out, they'd have no choice but to take action. He added that since he did more good than bad this time, they put in a request to the heroes and other witnesses to keep quiet about the kid in the All Might hoodie. But he wanted Makoto to know that his success only bought him a free pass from them, the police, this time. It wouldn't be smart to go around lauding him as the hero of the Sky Egg, or whatever, to which Makoto noted that that was smart marketing. Naomasa became speechless because of this, so she said she was just kidding. She then questioned the commendations and public praise part of what Naomasa said, and said that the Crawler's not after any of that, pointing that it's one of his best qualities. Naomasa let out a sigh and commented that it seems he's just a natural do-gooder, adding that he knows some people like that. After that, he added that personally, he was grateful to this kid. We returned to the present where Makoto had just finished telling this story to Koichi and Pop Step, where the two wondered and asked if her brother was somehow connected to all of this. Makoto explained that she thought it was his connection to her that made him grateful. Koichi commented that they seemed to get along very well, so he reluctantly said that he wouldn't reach that level. While they were talking, suddenly an individual shouted wanting people to make way, which caught their attention. Before long, this person arrived at Captain Celebrity's hospital room, and it turned out to be his wife, Pamela, who had arrived carrying their baby. Joy was visible on Captain Celebrity's face when he saw her, while Pamela suddenly handed their baby to Makoto. Captain Celebrity prepared to embrace his lovely wife, but unexpectedly, Pamela threw her body at his face like a javelin and angrily shouted at him, "How dare he?" She started to scold him and ask what had gone through his head during those hours while calling him a brainless idiot, to which Captain Celebrity could only scream in pain as he tried to calm her down because he said he already had so many broken bones. Koichi and Pop Step were concerned about this situation, so they also tried to calm Pamela down. Before long, Pamela stopped hitting him and just clutched his blanket. She trembled with extreme worry while saying what if he had been killed because of that stunt, to which he apologized and said he just wanted to show off his good side to her. After that, Pamela turned to Koichi and said that Makoto had told her everything. With tears in her eyes, she thanked him for saving her darling Chris, which he just brushed off. Shyly, he said that it actually felt good to be praised for once, to which Captain Celebrity said that he always thanked him for his efforts, and Makoto also said that she had just told him what her brother had said to her, which confused Koichi and made Pop Step comment that this blockhead wasn't very good at listening. In the next scene, 2 weeks had passed, and we went to the international airport. Here, the members of Americana gathered to say goodbye to Captain Celebrity and his family. Miyu commented that wearing CC hoodies was a bit embarrassing, so you tried to comfort her by saying that it was for a special occasion. Koichi asked Pop Step if Makoto wasn't there yet, to which she replied that Makoto had said she would arrive just in time. Before long, they saw Captain Celebrity, so they quickly got everyone ready. Koichi counted for their cue, and after that, they happily showed him the thank you tarp they had made. Captain Celebrity was touched by their effort, but this was quickly interrupted when he was suddenly stopped by some reporters who wanted to get his comments on how he felt now that he was out of the hospital and going home, and what he had done in Japan. He said that he wasn't here for long, but he was glad he came. For him, he said it felt like a real turning point. It was like he had been reborn better than before. He added that Narahata in particular came to feel like a home away from home, and he would never forget the good people he met in that little neighborhood. While he was saying all this, the Americana members started to let out tears of joy and sadness because of his departure. After that, Captain Celebrity said that he was thankful to all the people there, but he owed a lot to 2 people in particular, which made the reporters wonder who he was referring to. He said the first one was his manager, Makoto. He said that she was nothing short of a goddess in his eyes. Because of this comment, the reporters were utterly shocked. They started to misunderstand Captain Celebrity because of his wrong use of words, so they started to bombard him with questions about whether this was a shocking confession and if their work connection had blossomed into something more. The nervous Captain Celebrity tried to explain that what they were thinking was wrong and also tried to get help from his wife, but Pamela said that he was on his own while calling him lover boy. Makoto arrived on the scene and apologized because she said the vehicle she was in got stuck in traffic, so she was late. She immediately got the attention of the reporters, and they started questioning her about the status of her relationship with Captain Celebrity and if his wife knew what was happening between them. She stopped them all for a moment and said to let her explain. It was true and without doubt that Captain Celebrity had spent more time with her than with anyone else in Japan. If they were asking if their relationship was always strictly professional, the answer to that was yes. She added that he devoted every waking hour to the job and, quite frankly, didn't have time for a personal life. She pointed out that once the confidentiality agreements concerning the events on his schedule have expired, the related parties can all attest to his comings and goings. Next, a reporter asked if Captain Celebrity hadn't said there were 2 important people he was referring to. So who was the other one? To which he just apologized since he can't explain that right now. Just because of that, they misinterpreted him again, thinking he had a relationship that needed to be kept from the public, which worried him again and made him try to explain. Coming to the rescue again, Makoto said to let her respond on behalf of the agency. She explained that the second individual is what they could call a personal hero of Captain Celebrity, someone he respects. Moreover, she said that given the scandals in his past, they're choosing to exercise caution when revealing details of Captain Celebrity's personal friendships. Captain Celebrity felt so much relief and sided with what Makoto said, while Miyu was amazed at how good Makoto was at this. Koichi thought that All Might was the hero that Makoto was referring to. After that, Captain Celebrity thanked her and said that he still wasn't that confident that he can cut it back in the States, but he would try his best. And if his efforts weren't enough, he'd look to those around him for strength, to which Makoto agreed and said that he would still count on her after all, which puzzled him. Even Koichi and Pop Step were confused by what she meant, but before long, Makoto explained that starting this spring, she would be studying abroad at a college in New York, so CC shouldn't worry as she would continue to fulfill her duties as his manager. Captain Celebrity was very surprised to learn this because he said he hadn't mentioned it before, to which Pamela told him that they had already discussed it, which surprised him even more because she hadn't told him about it. After that, they started to board the plane and Makoto wished for them to be well and she would keep in touch. She smiled while looking at the waving Koichi and the still dazed Pop Step, and before long, their airplane took off. That evening, while serving tea, Koichi commented that Makoto was cool because she would be studying abroad and said she didn't seem like the type to remain pinned down in Japan. He also brought up whether Pop Step had seen how easily she handled the reporter's questions, to which Pop Step just said that she should have given him more credit, which confused him because Pop Step always told him to know his place. Pop Step agreed that he should still do that, but considering how he risked his life to help people, she felt like they gave him the short end of the stick. Koichi thought about that and replied that it did seem that way, and he would be lying if he said he didn't want at least a little credit. He quickly brushed it off and said that Pop Step was free to praise him now and then, which made Pop Step blush and exclaim that he couldn't just ask for that so casually. And so, that was what happened in the Sky Egg incident as told by Koichi back during his first year as the crawler. It was a big deal that made headlines, but he said he just happened to be there when it occurred. Meanwhile, there were people who chose to rush into disaster zones like that every day. That's what was amazing about pro heroes, and that's what he was thinking at the time. While he was narrating this to us, we went to the collapsed building where Knuckle Duster and Number 6 had fought. Tanuma and the police were already investigating it. Detective Tsukuuchi arrived with Tamagawa, and they said they were carrying the lab results. He explained that there were two distinct blood samples that came from this scene. The first came from the high-speed hero clock with the legal name Iwao Aguro, age 45, and a former pro hero. Tanuma commented that he could have guessed that and asked who the other one was. Tsukuuchi replied that it was inconclusive. He said they had unknown blood types and DNA mixed with some highly concentrated chemical substances, which prompted Tanuma to ask if he was saying that one of the individuals there wasn't human. Tsukuuchi replied that wasn't necessarily the case because quirks could be responsible for that individual's transformation. Tanuma sarcastically agreed and said that indeed they shouldn't use the non-human label and they needed to remain politically correct and all. After that, while looking at a specific substance that was smoking on the floor of the scene, he wondered what a clock was getting involved with and also wondered if they were really chasing a human here. While this was happening, Koichi continued his story and added to what he last said that ordinary people don't find themselves in the middle of major incidents repeatedly, so he was sure he wouldn't be involved in that kind of thing again. That was his natural assumption back then. He said that it would still be a long time before the incident that would see him at its center, playing the lead role, but he wouldn't just find himself at that scene by accident, and he wouldn't be diving into danger by choice either. He pointed out that when it happened, the danger would come at him out of nowhere, all on its own.